Apparently, the MC gains some familiarity with the magical earth.
The inn uses the bricks he created. Moreover, the inn is connected to his mana, which means he can use his memory storage magic on it. Thus, he must be enabled. The experiment to recreate the inn was a success. The MC notices that he cannot move. Furthermore, he also does not remember anything. So he cries. He questions whether he was involved in an accident when a woman arrives. She asks if he is hungry, and the boy wonders if she is a nurse. This can only mean that he is in the hospital. The little girl uses the power of illumination. The baby is terrified by that. Apparently, he is reincarnated in another world. That is not the world he knows. Thus, there is no option but a world where magic exists. The woman offers to breastfeed the boy. It is time to eat. The baby reflects that his body does not respond to him. It seems that magic exists there, and that beautiful woman is his mother. Reincarnating in a new world is the best. Now he has started his new life as a baby and still does not have a name. They only call him Mary's son and other things. Apparently, there will be a naming ceremony when he turns 6 years old. Everyone calls him the third son, and this gives the MC a bad feeling. For him, what is most amazing about that world so far is the existence of magic. As far as he knows, that room has nothing for illumination. Perhaps it is because the people there usually use magic to generate light. This means that magic is part of everyday life. In other words, this means that he will also be able to use magic. Fire, wind, water, ice. Just imagining it excites the boy. He tries to extend his arm to use the illumination magic, but nothing happens. The MC fidgets in bed until he gets frustrated and starts to cry. His mother Mary picks him up and asks what is happening. He decides that he needs to change his approach. First, it is necessary to observe how his family uses magic and learn that way. The boy's mother notices that he is awake. Then she raises her index finger. She closes her eyes and something shines, until she calls for the light. Apparently, somehow they channel energy from their bodies. Mary finds it funny that the MC keeps grumbling nonstop. The vocal cords necessary to cast spells have not yet evolved enough, but the first task is to find his mana source and train. From then on, he spent every day of the last 3 years training his mana. Now he still cannot use magic and is starving. Moreover, they are poor farmers, so hunger is a constant. At just 3 years old, poverty is already taking its toll on his body. From then on, he will need to look for food. There are 2 types of mana. The first exists in his body, and the second can be found around people. The external mana can be absorbed through the mouth. After he learned this, he began to collect all the mana inside his abdomen. He was able to control and spread this mana within his body. Thanks to this, he is now capable of refining it. Even so, he needs to be at least 6 years old for the naming ceremony, and only then will he be able to use magic. This means that he will only be able to use everyday magic, like illumination or creating water. His parents only know how to use this type of magic and nothing more. But since he was a baby, he has been trying day after day to use magic. Now he finally had some positive feedback. The boy takes a deep breath. He gathers the mana in his stomach and refines it. Then he brings it to his chest and lets it flow through his limbs. Once the mana reaches the edge of his body, he must extend his hand to it and bring it back. Slowly, circulate the mana throughout his body. When it is in the air, the mana looks like gas, but the mana created inside their bodies looks much more like a liquid. The mana overflows in his palms and releases everything onto the ground. The MC reflects that he needs to go slowly and not lose focus. He stopped there last time. The mana he worked so hard on was dispersed. When you are training your mana, the image is very important. The soil is soft and tender, moist to the touch, and rich in nutrients. In his past life, his grandmother from the countryside used something to fertilize the soil. Removing the weeds and properly cultivating the soil allows the field to receive proper drainage and sunlight. The boy's heart begins to race. He feels the ground. Then he starts to sweat. Suddenly, all the soil in front of him is perfect. The boy is impressed because he managed to do that. Then he takes a handful of dirt in his hands. The plots are about 10 square meters. The topography can vary. They are farmers, but still, the soil on their land is tough and full of weeds, the worst possible scenario. The agricultural machinery technology is scarce and doesn't compare to that of his previous world, but he did it. A simple magic, but it was still the first time since he was born that he managed to use it. For him, that is his first step in the new world. Suddenly, the boy's stomach growls. Apparently, using magic makes a person hungry. The little boy decides to start planting from a root that can be consumed after 20 days. That is the standard feed for poor farmers. Vegetables that are terrible. They look awful and taste horrible. Even so, the boy doesn't care about the horrible reputation of those roots because he needs to eat something. The little boy works hard carrying water and digging in the dirt. Finally, he manages to cultivate everything he needed. Even so, it's a lot of work for a 3-year-old child. It's been 5 days since he succeeded in using his magic. Every day he uses his magic on the soil, and now part of the land has turned into soft soil. There are even flowers sprouting. The flowers are a sign of good soil, but it's only been 5 days, and usually this takes 20. Obviously, it's too fast, and that's not normal, but there's nothing the boy can do about it. Then the little boy pulls the plant up. The root is huge and comes out whole. It's an immense amount of food. Under normal circumstances, he would have gotten a few bad things. The boy takes one of the roots, then washes it in the bucket of water. He brings the food to his mouth and takes a bite. Then he chews with difficulty. The taste of that is terrible, but that is the beginning of his life as a farmer. After improving the soil, he turned his attention to selecting the crop, and the vegetables in his soil grow extremely fast. Tuenes usually take 20 days to grow, but those roots were ready in just 5, which is a bit scary. Of course, nothing there compares to what he used to eat before, but it's that or starve. The food from his past life was fresh, delicious, and beautiful. Farmers and researchers made a careful selection of everything that took some time, so he needs to be patient. In any case, something exists there that actively challenges common sense, and that thing is magic. He didn't understand all the theory behind it, but the vegetables in his garden grew very fast, so he will start selling that. The boy hopes to someday like the taste of that food. He doesn't know how to achieve that. But now that he stopped to think about it, he remembered a story he heard in class about green peas. They checked the green peas with their own eyes, and over time and harvests, they discovered the principle of genetic inheritance. Thinking about what to do, the little boy falls asleep. The first step is to check the characteristics of the tuenes. There are not only differences between the roots, but also in the leaves and flowers. Some are black and others are purple. While some have smaller numbers, others have larger ones. The flowers of one are white, while the other is yellow. After classifying the characteristics, he managed to separate them into 6 planting sections. Since he started this method, it has become his hobby and routine. Then the boy noticed that those vegetables are also magical. The only magic he created mixes the internal with the external, and whenever he uses magic, the fused mana is also consumed. Even if he tries to fuse the magic again, there is no internal mana in his body, so it's not possible to do magic again. The boy doesn't know how to restore his mana when that happens. While he eats, it's not like the recovery is quick. He learned that after being able to eat that regular food. So he came to the conclusion that through normal foods and vegetables, he can recover more quickly. It takes time after eating for the mana to recover 100%. So he hasn't noticed yet, and there's an important question. He wants to know which food recovers the most mana. The difference in recovery volume can be observed in various tuenes. The taste hasn't changed much, but he will postpone that for now. The boy is having a lot of fun discovering so much in just a few days. What he knows for sure is that he needs to compare and prioritize foods that recover the maximum amount of mana. But in the end, there is a limit to what his body can do. The boy would love to know a faster method. For now, he will just expand the soil. The boy puts his hands on the ground. It is not possible to concentrate at first without closing his eyes, but now he is already quite used to it, and energy dissipates. Then it settles on top of his plantation. He wonders what that is, a type of shimmering gas. The boy cannot see clearly, so he concentrates his refined mana in his limbs. Something strange happens. The entire plantation reacts, and the little boy is impressed. A blue gas emerges from the soil. He collects one of the roots. Then he notices that it is indeed that plant that is generating the blue gas. It is leaking from the root and escaping into the air. This makes the boy feel impressed. He starts to pull out other roots. Comparing, the boy concludes that the one that recovers the highest level of mana is the darker blue one. In other words, the blue color must be the mana itself. After that, he continued to observe and eat while concentrating the mana in his eyes. The boy discovered that the larger the root, the more mana it possesses. The taste remained horrible, but the boy continued day after day working with genetics. At the age of 5, he discovered many more things. The boy discovered a type that recovers an enormous amount of mana. Even so, it has no immediate effect. That information and the magical blue color left him euphoric for some time. The little boy wonders what would happen if he concentrated the mana in another part of his body, not just his eyes. The boy needs to test that, but at that moment, he should just sleep. Until then, he had only circulated the mana through his body and let it escape into the soil instead of using his magic. So instead of letting the mana leave his body, he keeps it inside. When you concentrate a large amount of mana, there is the legendary body strengthening, and thanks to that, it became much easier to water the plants and expand his land. The boy reflects that if muscles can become stronger, perhaps internal organs can too. Maybe if he improves his digestion ability, he could eat more easily and absorb mana from the vegetables more quickly. The boy spent a lot of time managing how he would use his magic to deal with the situation, until one fine day, someone says they are going to leave. Mary asks him to be careful. She has a sad look, and tells the boy to come back home safely. The man smiles at her and tells the MC that he will leave everything in his care. His father, who acted as the pillar of the family, had to leave. The boy did not understand why a farmer needed to leave home. The reason was that he was called to war. A large-scale conflict came to light, forcing most of the male villagers to leave. All the boys went to that war. He always felt that in that world, technology was suffering from a severe deficiency, and apparently, the problem is war. During more peaceful times, the villagers worked together cultivating the land. The system was fair, meaning the more you could cultivate, the more land you would have. If there were no wars, more fields could exist, and technology would thrive. The young boy feels downcast. Mary tells the boy to stay calm because it is not the first time his father has gone to war. It is safe to assume that the responsibility of creating fields is important, and he must take it on. The rates are proportional to how much land you are cultivating. But there is something that is worrying the boy, which is the quality of the equipment. Of those who went to war, some have farming tools, but they are not functional in a war. In other words, these men are used as common soldiers and end up getting hurt, which means that the land around them can become turbulent, even leading to losing their homes. But the boy does not want to be involved in anyone's death. Even so, some potential from that war will be necessary. Weapons and armor will be in high demand. The most important thing of all is money. A woman arrives wanting to trade some roots for potatoes. The boy notices that the problem in that world is that they use bartering. Within that village, money does not circulate. In light of this situation, there is only one thing to do. He will have to rely on a merchant. Mary suggests that the boy make sandals. It is possible to make a lot of things with the roots he is cultivating, such as sandals, boots, and various shoes. This way, the boy will be able to buy whatever he wants. The MC reflects that this seems super inefficient. A merchant is someone who travels between cities and towns to sell their items, but there is still the aspect of being able to negotiate prices. So this needs to be a foolproof way to make money. A man in the city observes the sandals and thinks they are very good. The MC says that his mother taught him how to make them. Smiling, the young man decides to buy a pair of sandals. For a moment, the little boy was extremely happy because he was going to receive money, but soon reality set in. He only received 6 old copper coins. Apparently, the price of the sandal is much lower than he expected. At that rate, it will take him a lifetime to buy weapons, so he calls for a merchant. The MC asks if he can ask him something. After that, a few days passed since he learned about market prices from the merchant. Now he is going to try something like that. The young man is tired from working so much. Based on the information he obtained, that will be a useful resource for profits. He plans to start an experiment to grow magic mushrooms. The MC was shocked when he discovered that mana restorers existed. On that occasion, the merchant showed him a magic mushroom. Apparently, that type of mushroom does not grow easily and is scarce. The merchant says that the item is very rare. The MC looks and is left speechless. Then he questions whether that is just any shiitake mushroom. But the merchant is boasting about having it. Unlike what he imagined, the flavor was a bit simple, and using a cultivation kit, he can make the shiitake grow. Basically, mushrooms grow from fungi on trees that act as their primary source of nutrients. If the magic mushrooms grow in the same way as shiitake, then the possibilities are endless. The trunks were dried, which ensured a time saving. Now a certain amount of dryness and moisture is necessary. After that, he will plant the fungi and wait for them to grow. But if it were that easy, someone else would have already tried to do the same. Since they are called magic mushrooms, they must have some mana inside them. But if he steals the nutrients from the tree trunk, then their mana must also come from there. If that is the case, he can just give his mana to those wooden trunks. The boy is excited to try. The first step is to give different amounts of mana to different logs of wood. Then during the day, he will take care of the field. In the late afternoon, he will tend to the logs, and at night, he will make sandals with his mother. So after waiting for some time, the mushrooms appear. There are only 3 of them, but apparently his cultivation worked. Now to make that work, he needs to cultivate on a large scale. However, his house no longer has space for that pile of wood. There are sandal and tunic plantations taking up a lot of space. Instead of more storage space, he needs a building just for that. When he uses his magic to make the soil fertile, he can also create crests. Following this logic, it will be possible to change the shape of the soil and build something new. That is a challenge of magical architecture. But it's not like he is challenging himself without a plan in mind. A large amount of soil there can be used for building material. Creating something from nothing is a rule of magic and incredibly difficult. Earth magic, for example, only exists in video games. The refined mana inside the body is collected up to his palm and used to generate throwable gravel stones. The damage inflicted by that stone depends on the speed at which it travels. By visualizing the entire process, that can be done, as long as that is possible. Even so, it is extremely inefficient. Consumption is more efficient when you are using something that already exists. The little boy becomes reflective. For some reason, the only time he can use magic properly is when he uses the soil. That wouldn't be a problem if he could simply convert the soil into metal. A good challenge would be to create a warehouse using the soil. The boy's mana begins to flow. He is determined. Then a spell happens while he keeps his hands on the ground. Everything gets confusing, and the boy falls. After that, he faints. The boy wakes up sometime later. In front of him is his mother, very worried. The little boy's head hurts. He stayed in bed for 2 days. What made the boy faint was the fact that he used all the mana that was in his body, which caused an acute mana deficiency. Originally, all the mana inside his body circulates to make it easier to use magic. This includes using mana to enhance the physical capabilities of the body. He is now grateful that he didn't reach the point of losing all his mana and ending up dead. Although he failed the mission, it taught him a lesson. A huge crater opened up where the boy used his power. Normally, his mana shouldn't be drained like that, so there must be a cause for the sudden consumption of all his mana. Perhaps a relationship between area and volume. While a square with 10 meters on each side has an area of 100, a cube with 10 meters on each side has a volume of 1,000. Simplifying things, he probably consumed 10 times more mana than necessary and will need to give up lifting a building for a moment. Instead, he will try to create the materials for his building. Using the soil, the boy manages to create a brick. The magic of architecture is at the level of his dreams, and the creation of bricks was a success. Sometime later, the little boy manages to build a square with them. Even though it turned out wobbly, it's just the first time he did it. Fundamentally, that falls under earth magic, but the applications for it only increase. Something catches the boy's attention. To him, it's a terrible thing that is destroying the lands. The soil that his ancestors cultivated for generations will soon no longer be suitable for farming. Secretly, he has always felt proud of how special his village looks. Using the spell to heal the land and convert stones into fertilizer to enrich the soil, magic to cultivate the fields, magic to strengthen the body or parts of it, and now magic to create bricks. Even so, he finds field cultivation magic boring. As it stands, only he is capable of using it, but there's no reason to name it, especially since no magic words are needed to use the magic. Even so, every time he improves the soil, he says the name of the magic because it makes him happier. This is all because of how long it is taking him to be able to use spells and cast them. The MC says the magic words, and the soil is completely transformed, leaving him impressed. The magic activated the moment he spoke. Even though he is used to it by now, until then he needed to imagine what he wanted for it to become reality. Apparently, he has finally developed his own magic, the creation of spells, that is now becoming more efficient than he initially thought. A silent magic is actually good, but it gets boring after a while. The boy is happy that he can use magic just by speaking, so he uses the power to improve the soil again. Now he has a field of 10 meters. Using magic through speech means that the effects will be constant. Without changing that, he can simply activate the magic in his head and alter the amount of soil that will be cultivated. Of course, the mana consumed depends on the size of the space. The boy still doesn't understand how that is possible, so he starts experimenting with, for example, the spell to create bricks. He talks all day to create bricks, and this happens even when he is going to sleep. Many months later, the boy continues to persist in that, until he finally manages to complete the spell to create bricks, making items with the same mass. That is totally conditional. The condition in this case is the casting of the spell itself, and that's how he gained his new technique for casting spells. For some time, the other people in the village have been acting strangely. Apparently, he exaggerated a bit when he went to do the brick experiment, and his mother observes that having that amount of bricks is a problem. The woman notes that at least if they were plates, they would be useful for something. This gives the main character an idea. If it is possible to make bricks with the soil, that means it is possible to make kitchen utensils with the same ingredients. So the boy produces a rice pot. The MC gets very excited and starts making a bunch of things for the house and giving them as gifts to his mother, until she says that they already have enough for the boy to stop producing those items. Even so, the boy's intention is to make his mother happy. Until then, he made brown and dull things. The next leap is to focus on quality instead of quantity. Mary is very happy when she receives her new item, which is a white porcelain cup. Apparently, using the exact materials is not necessarily required when it comes to magic. The little boy decides that he will make something that looks even more expensive so that his mother will be even happier. The new item is a cup with flowers drawn on it that look like they were made by a child, but his mother loved it. Apparently, he does not have artistic talent. Even so, he made the cup. The boy cannot make porcelain cutlery, but he heard at some point in his past life that using sand from the sea would make it possible to create some things. So he visualizes something cylindrical and long, as well as transparent. A new item is created, and the glass cup. By doing this, he is creating something new that has probably never been seen in that village or outside of it. Now the boy sells sandals and magic mushrooms. He received 14 bronze coins and remains indignant. Even though the amount has increased, they are still just bronze coins. Suddenly, the merchant says he wants to talk to the little boy. He reflects that this is a great opportunity since he wanted to sell the things he made, so he asks what the merchant wants. The man says he wants to buy some of the bricks the boy made. The merchant asks if he built anything recently, and the boy gets confused, saying it was just a warehouse. Even so, the man is shocked that it was made with bricks. Now he wants the little boy to talk to his parents about selling those bricks, but first of all, the MC confirms that he will sell. Then, excited, he says he made some utensils, but the man seems confused. Then the merchant turns and says he is only interested in the bricks and can see the pots and plates another time. The child grabs him in a manic way and says that the man will not regret it. Thanks to that pressure, he agrees to take a look. Upon seeing everything the little boy made, he is impressed and questions how the boy managed to do it. The merchant agrees to buy that along with the bricks. The boy is happy and believes he will earn more than just a few bronze coins. Even so, nothing changed, and he managed to get 5 bronze coins. The MC grabs the man again. He says that the man must be thinking he is just a silly little child who does not know the price of things. The merchant says he is paying much more than he usually does for that, and the boy asks why it is so cheap. Those things are very beautiful, and there are probably people who will buy them for a good price, but the merchant says he usually sells to common people. Even if they are nice things, people do not have that much money to spend. Rich people only do business with merchants they have known for a long time. The man does not even have a chance. Advertising expensive products to those who can actually buy them is the key to business, but in that world, there is no internet or newspapers to promote products. In any case, he also does not have any kind of connection to make that publicity, and talking to that merchant was just a waste of time. The man tells the boy not to feel so sad about it. The market for bricks is very good at that moment, so he plans to buy all the bricks the little boy can make by the next time. The MC spends the next few days building piles and more piles of bricks. The merchant returns impressed. Apparently, the boy really kept his promise to make even more bricks. If it were any other child, he would not have believed his word, but they have known each other for some time. This time, the merchant brought a creature strong enough to carry that pile of bricks. The child is impressed. That looks like a dragon. The monster looks at him. The merchant asks if the boy has never seen a horse dragon before, and the MC is impressed, but soon the merchant explains that it is not the same as a dragon. That creature is a work monster. Service beasts are creatures that serve their owner from the egg, and these eggs grow by absorbing the mana of their protector. Another point is that the creature will resemble the mana given for cultivation. In other words, it depends on how you will hatch that egg. Therefore, when hatching the egg, that service creature will be completely loyal to you. The MC finishes loading the man's giant cart with the bricks. In that world, there are very powerful dragons, but the horse dragon is quite popular. The horse is a very durable animal. The bird type is also quite popular since they can fly. The MC asks if these work beasts are not expensive, and the man replies that yes, the horse models that can be used for riding are even more valuable. Even though there is now a demand for bricks, it will not be like that forever. Even so, the boy does not even know how to take care of an egg. If he is lucky, he can make a lot of money with that. Then he calls the merchant. The MC says he wants to try hatching a beast egg too. Then the little boy tells the merchant to bring him an egg the next time he appears, and the cost of that piece was simply all the money he had saved up until then. One fine day, suddenly several men returned. The children were happy to find their parents again. Sheila returns to pick up her fourth daughter in her arms. Mary is very happy to be back with her husband. Then the woman asks her son if the merchant brought anything good for him and if the boy can lend her some money. But the MC says he has no money. The woman doesn't understand what he is trying to say. When the boy was only 3 years old, he decided he wanted to cultivate the sprites. At that time, his mother reflected that it was too heavy a job for a child. Even so, he was determined. The woman told her son that he should just make sure the growth of the cultivation was good. When they went to check, the little boy had created several gardens. Mary concluded at that moment that her son was amazing. Some time passed, and now the little boy, at 5 years old, wanted to save money. The woman thought it was too early for that, but the MC said he wanted to save money for the future. Even being just a child, he dealt with the merchant alone all this time. Aside from the magic mushrooms he cultivated, sometimes the boy worried her considering how much he pushed himself. Her son built a warehouse with his own bricks. In addition, he gave a beautiful porcelain cup, but she never understood how he could do all that. Mary asks why the boy did that. She can't believe he spent all the money from his work on an egg from a beast. The MC says that when the egg hatches, they will be able to make a lot of money. But the woman responds by commenting that if it were that easy, other people would have already gotten rich. The woman also says that those eggs are like playing the lottery. Many of them don't even hatch. The boy's mother says she only let him work because the idea was to save money. In response, the MC says that since that money came from his work, he could spend it on whatever he wanted. Mary says that isn't quite true since he even sold the sandals they made together. From then on, the boy will be forbidden from buying anything without her permission. The little boy tries to apologize, but the woman wants him to reflect on his decisions. His mother is beautiful and young, but she becomes terrible when she is angry. Now the boy has no other choice. He is the one in the role of building the bricks and selling them to the merchant, so he will bend the system a bit and save some money in secret. At that moment, everything is about that egg. The boy made a little pouch for that egg using the sprites, and now he can carry the item safely. Multiple people helping to hatch a single egg. It can happen, but the mana is different, so it becomes difficult to create the same type of working creature every time. The MC fills his eyes with mana. The egg is surrounded by a blue light. The boy observes that it has very little mana, but even so, it is surrounded by that color. Then, with a breath of power, the little boy adds mana to that egg. The shade of blue becomes more intense, and the little boy feels happy because this means he absorbed the mana. He is not sure how much mana should be used for that. Even so, he wants the egg to make the best use of it. Every day he watched the egg and added mana to it. The little boy thinks that maybe he should build a hiding place. As his mother says, he is just a child and shouldn't spend money on himself. The customs in that place are very outdated. Decisions are made by the head of the family thanks to the patriarchy. The MC started saving money so he can now buy a decent weapon, since this will be important for him to make a name for himself during times of war. The younger children are forced to dedicate their lives to the elders unless they leave that family. Now, instead of making weapons, the boy needs to start preparing for when he becomes independent.
As they say, you have to strike while the iron is hot.
The village where he was born is surrounded, and outside there is a very dense forest. In the past, when the lands were safe enough, the trees were cut down and cultivated to build the village. Then, with the wars, the city continues to do its best to stay standing, but it is shrinking. The lands outside the village have no owner except for the one who cultivates them. The little boy decides that now he just needs to find a place to build his house. He uses body enhancement magic. With that, he can contain his fatigue no matter how much work he does. The young boy also deals with the soil using his power. He pushes the trees up to be able to knock them down. Then he throws all the trees down. Now all those trees need to be removed from the place where he wants to build. Using the power to flatten the land, he managed to get rid of the trees. After repeating the magic for some time, the plane was constructed. The boy practically made a giant clearing in the forest, and now he has all the work of building brick by brick. The young boy would like to know some magic that would allow him to build a property all at once. Then he has an idea, and concludes that he doesn't necessarily need to build a house. By his hypothesis, he spends more mana than he has because of the volume when he tries to build a building all at once. So the solution is quite simple. He just needs to make the walls individually. Systematically, he uses all the bricks, stacking and building a sturdy wall. For this, the boy uses the image of a single wall. Then the little boy manages to build a square of bricks. But the roof and the door will need to be made manually. He would be able to finish building his house in the forest in no time. Meanwhile, he continued watching his egg. Apparently, it is growing quite a bit, and besides that, the blue color is much more intense, which means it should hatch soon. His mother passes by the door, calling the boy to hurry up. The MC has finally turned 6 years old. When you turn 6, you receive baptism in the village, and that is the day for the young boy. In the church, there are no more than 10 people, but it is a small village anyway. The MC does not remember his baptism from his past life, so it probably wasn't very fun, but the naming ceremony occupies a space in the baptism. With that, the young boy will finally be able to use magic. In everyday life, humanity has always feared monsters and lived hidden from them. Despite this, many people became capable of using magic, and the number of human territories that managed to survive increased. Humans who cannot defend themselves alone receive that divine ability to thrive. Now they will begin the naming ceremony. The citizens receive daily magic through the baptism ceremony. The church is able to acquire followers, and the feudal lord receives their names. It is a system where everyone can benefit. The priest says that with that naming, the boy will receive divine protection and the ability to use magic. Even so, magic can only be used for the purpose of improving human life. The priest asks if the boy promises not to abuse magic without reason, and the little boy says yes. Then he opens a heavy book. The MC notices that it has incredible decoration. After reading something in the book, the priest closes it on the table. He then refers to the boy as the son of Asura and Mary. The man announces that this church will baptize him. From then on, he will be ours and must live for his lord and friends with integrity. The Lord, with his divine protection, will be watching him. Ars uses his power to enhance vision. Then he notices that the magic is concentrated in the man's palm. Suddenly, he pushes a magic circle in his direction. Ars is taken aback. The boy has been questioning all this time what would happen when the magic concentrated in the brain, and apparently, memory preservation occurs. Setting aside the magic circle, new information is being inserted directly into his mind. Now he is capable of using everyday magic. The boy tests the illumination, and soon light is created. Ars notices that there is no difference between magic done by children or by adults, which shows that it is completely stagnant. Even improving that ability for years, it will not move from where it is. So the little boy's plans to escape everything go down the drain. Ars hoped he could use another magic besides Earth after gaining his powers, but at that moment, it is important to forget a bit about that. There is another thing that caught his attention, which was the priest's magic circle. Ars wants to understand more about it. Several days pass, and the little boy still hasn't managed to understand anything about it. He cannot understand the letters. In fact, he can barely understand the letters of modern people. Imagine the ancestral ones. He wanted to be able to at least write his own name. Suddenly, the egg starts to crack. The boy gets excited and wonders what kind of beast will come out of it. The egg continues making noises as if whoever is inside wants to come out. Even so, it takes a long time. Ars wonders if he could give a little help. But at that moment, the egg breaks. A creature comes out from inside it. It looks like a horse mixed with a handle. That cute little horse stares at Ars. The little animal tries to stand up, and the boy wonders if it can already do that. Despite its wobbly legs, it managed to do it. Ars gets very excited. He claps for his new little pet, then he pets it. Deep down, the young boy is grateful for having acquired that little animal. Ars notices that it is a horse mixed with a reindeer. Once it grows, it will be strong and big enough to carry things. Suddenly, the little creature starts eating its own eggshell. The boy doesn't understand why it is doing that. Ars doesn't know what that little monster eats. Work beasts depend on nutrition provided by magic, but its behavior seems different. Providing meat every day would be very difficult for him. He has even heard stories of people who couldn't raise their pets because they didn't have money for food. Besides, if it needs milk, he doesn't have any to give. The little monster starts eating something else. The little thing is eating radishes, which grow very easily around there, and apparently, it loved it. Up to that point, it seems to be a herbivore, so he will be able to sustain the cost of feeding that little monster. The little horse starts staring at him, then it rubs against his leg and climbs onto his lap. There, it lies down and sleeps. Ars doesn't understand what is happening, but it is very cute. After 10 days, the horse is already huge. Until then, he avoided naming the horse to not get emotionally attached, but now he wants to do that. He wants a special name. The boy has the feeling that the everyday magic is programmed and written in the magic circle. He will try to do the naming work in the best way he can using a magic circle. Since that creature has magic, it will probably be a success, and then it will be able to look for water on its own. Without enough water or drinking contaminated water, it is possible that it could die. Ars reflects on what name he will give it. He has no confidence in his naming sense. If he remembers correctly, a creature with 2 horns was considered a bicorn, but now he can't associate the names. Then the boy remembers the name Valkyrie, which belonged to a war god from Legends. The boy asks what his companion thinks of the name. Valkyrie interacts happily. Apparently, she can understand human language. She is quite intelligent, but now he will start the naming ceremony. Recently, Ars managed to refine magic naturally through breathing. He will do this carefully and delicately this time and fill his whole body with dense magic. Ars stretches his hand forward using his power. It is difficult to keep all the magic there. Then he aims at Valkyrie. His goal is to recreate all the details of the magic circle that he memorized. The little boy feels that his veins are about to burst and starts sweating from exhaustion. After a while, a magic circle appears in front of him. Approaching his limit, he managed to do that. Then Ars says that her name should be Valkyrie. The circle disperses. Tired, Ars falls to the ground. That was much more complicated than he imagined. He could have died if he had failed. Then he calls Valkyrie so they can try using magic. They go outside the little house so she can use magic without setting everything on fire. Then Valkyrie creates a glowing ball. The little boy is very happy that she can use magic. After testing several spells, the boy understands that Valkyrie uses various types of everyday magic, like ignition or drinking water. Suddenly, a brick starts to float. Ars is confused. Valkyrie is calm as if she is controlling those bricks. The boy wonders what is happening. Valkyrie is using the magic that only Ars knew. Perhaps the memory preservation reached her through the magic circle. This would mean that the other children who received names could also use that magic. Ars is outraged that other people can use what only he should know. Then he calls for Valkyrie and shows her what he can do. Ars stretches a little pot towards her. He asks if she can make one like it. But as he thought, Valkyrie can only use the same spells as him after being named. For example, Ars can control the size of the land he will flatten whenever he wants. However, Valkyrie can only flatten squares of a certain size. The naming ritual is much more systematic than a protection and explains its inability to customize its basic magic. Ars wonders if it would be safe to sell her to someone who knows how to use her magic. Now he needs to confirm that with someone. The merchant is shocked that Ars's work beast uses magic and says he has never heard of that before. One thing the MC learned about that world is the value that information holds. If a merchant who does business everywhere has never heard of this, he is probably right. So beasts that use magic are not common. The merchant asks if the boy's egg has hatched, and he says yes. It turned into a horse that can carry things. The merchant gets very excited and asks to take a look at the animal. Ars says he will bring Valkyrie to him. She is learning not to use magic in front of people. The seller is impressed, saying that she is really amazing. Of course, it is very good to have help carrying things, but she also has the appearance. Even the color is very beautiful. Ars says that in any case, he has no interest in selling her, and the merchant asks why. After all, he spent all the money he had buying that egg with the intention of making more money. Even so, Ars acknowledges that he has probably grown attached to the animal. To be honest, his real reason for keeping her around is his interest in her magical ability. But it is true that he wants to stay by her side. Having her by his side, considering she is much stronger than he is, can keep him safe. The merchant asks if the boy wants to make a deal. He has 5 creature eggs and can give them all to Ars. However, not everything is that simple. After all, he is a merchant. He says he will give the eggs to Ars until they hatch. Then he will come back to buy the monsters that are born. If the beasts are hatched by Ars, it won't be hard to find a buyer. Ars says he agrees, but he must define the terms. The terms discuss the value of the beasts, sales rules, and other things. With them, Ars feels much more secure about making that deal. If he can gather enough monster eggs, he will no longer have financial difficulties on the farm. From then on, Ars is determined to work hard. Ars concludes that he will need to properly inject his magic into those eggs. Valkyrie starts sniffing them, and Ars says she can't eat them, but quickly the creature puts one of them in her mouth. The boy panics when he thinks one of the eggs broke, until Valkyrie lies down next to them, and Ars notices that they are all intact. Apparently, she wants to hatch those eggs. The creature wants to take care of them as if they were her own. Touching the eggs with her snout, she transmits her energy. Ars is shocked that Valkyrie can inject mana, and apparently she was born knowing that the eggs need to absorb mana to hatch. Then he concludes that she cannot hatch those eggs because the creatures that are born depend on the energy of whoever hatched them, and it wouldn't make sense for him to keep those eggs. Then Ars notices that she has put her magic inside 3 of the eggs. It is possible to share the care of an egg with other people, but that complicates the reproduction of that amount of magical power. Ars agrees to leave 3 of the eggs for Valkyrie and tells her to be careful and ensure they hatch properly. The boy is proud. In his past life, he found a dog in the middle of the street. At that time, his mother questioned whether he was really capable of taking care of that little creature and said there was no way he could take on that responsibility. He managed to keep the dog after saying he would take responsibility for it. Back then, he thought he was taking care of the little one by feeding it and walking it, but the cost of food, vaccinations, medicines, and consultations must be taken into account. When he stops to think about what his parents said that day, he concludes that they were right. Now that he has several junior Valkyries to take care of, the situation is a bit complicated. The 5 eggs hatched safely. The ones he hatched are a bit bigger, but they all look like Valkyrie. Now, he has already overcome the first phase anyway. But as expected, the more of them there are, the less food will be left. If he wants to continue with this business, just the plantation he has in his hideout will not be enough. He needs to increase the number of gardens to cultivate in the forest. Excited, Ars tells all those animals to come with him. He uses the same method as before, cutting down trees and leveling the ground. Then it is just a matter of using the soil preparation and improvement for everything to be ready for planting. Ars tries to control those little monsters, but they are very restless. The boy Zeker gave them a name, and even so, they can use magic. Apparently, magic is not something you gain with a name, or the beasts live by different rules than humans. This means that all the monsters born into that family will be able to use magic. Ars wonders if Valkyrie can ask the others not to use magic, but at that moment, the best option is to focus on expanding the planting area. Now the size is much more pleasant than before. You could even say it is immense. Despite everything, it is like deforestation. It is so large that it is hard to count its size on one hand. But as someone who learned about deforestation in his other life, he worries about the damage it can cause to nature. As the people from the village said, the forest is big enough to explore, and he needs to feed several creatures. The bigger, the better. But the bigger it is, the harder it will be to take care of everything. To combat fatigue, it is better for them to start working together. Ars questions if Valkyrie is ready for the first ride. Although she is not a horse, a regular saddle will probably suffice. At least that is what he thought. His father says there is no one in that village who can make a saddle for a monster. He questions if a cart is not enough, since that is what they usually do with these monsters. Even so, he really wants to gallop on Valkyria, because someday he plans to go to the battlefield, and cavalry is much stronger than regular soldiers. It is not a mistake, since being on top of Valkyria will give him a great advantage. Even so, if there is no saddle for him to ride, the solution is to try to gallop this way. Of course, the ability to control a living being by synchronizing his movements with theirs requires skills. Riding Valkyrie was much easier than he imagined it would be. Valkyrie is very intelligent and walks at a speed that is comfortable for him. Thanks to that, he was able to ride her without needing a saddle. Even so, things did not go as expected. Ars starts to feel terrible pain in his muscles because he spent the day riding, and he did not expect to go through that. No matter how careful Valkyrie is, he will keep swaying, and to avoid falling, he has to force his legs. By mobilizing the muscles, he ends up straining all of them, which might be much harder than just wearing armor. Even so, for Ars, there is no other option because he does not plan to give up. After that, he continued galloping day after day to prepare. The boy says that Ars always gets excited after lying down to sleep and talks non-stop. The Mick questions where he got that from and if he is really doing that. He was learning a new magic after a galloping training. When he looks at the people using magic, he can see their blue aura in their eyes. Perhaps the magic generated in the body flows like steam and is always wasted. He wants to know what could happen if he did not let the magic escape. A great evolution in natural healing powers was noticed. The boy noticed the effect this had so far, but he still has not used the cultivation spell. The reason he has not done so is that the effect is constant. With leveling, you can make an area completely flat, and with brick creation, you can make several of the same size at the same time. The body fortification spell makes your whole body stronger until the end of the time. Even if he sleeps after using the strengthening spell, it continues to work normally. In summary, the proposal to cultivate spells is to prolong the effect of fatigue recovery. With this magic, he can wake up super energized the next day despite muscle fatigue. Ars is very happy about this. He lies there like a fool on the bed, smiling. After having his recovery moment, he can do the galloping training without hesitation. The merchant appears saying he brought an extra egg, but the boy managed to hatch all the ones he gave him earlier. He thought 1 or 2 would hatch, but apparently, the deal with the beasts is going very fast. Even if you have multiple eggs, they usually do not hatch at the same time. It normally takes more than a month to get even one. The merchant observes that he can put those creatures up for sale, but he does not know if he should do that since they might buy them for inappropriate purposes. The truth is that he does not want to sell the creatures at first. Ars questions if the man plans to use the monsters in his own business. The man smiles and says that he does too, but this time it's something else. The little boy must give one of his animals for free. Ars is outraged, and the man tries to explain himself. The merchant says he will introduce him to the aristocrats who govern those lands. He mentioned earlier that merchants who travel between villages like him have difficulties acquiring connections, and some credit is necessary to make the burghers buy their products. The aristocratic market monopolizes transactions, making it difficult for new people to enter. Ars notices that the story about the merchant having lost all the items he had made was a lie. The merchant changes the subject and says that expensive things can only be sold to the rich. Even so, he has no connection to credit, which makes the situation difficult. But if you give that creature to a rich person, the story will be very different. A rideable creature is recognized as very valuable and useful in that world, and in times of war, they become a strategic material. Delivering one of the creatures to them will create a strong connection with the aristocracy. Once you enter that circle, it becomes easier to be introduced to other aristocrats. In social status terms, there is an advancement in the messenger business, and it is impossible to ignore the nobles who govern that land. Ars questions what he means. If they sell a combat creature to the enemies, the lives of all the people will be at stake. The merchant says that then they should go to the residence of the aristocrats, and the boy asks if he has to go too. The man says he will talk to his father. That was how he managed to leave the city for the first time. Ars was impressed with everything he saw. That is the city where the burghers live. With the help of all those creatures, they pulled the cart in 3 days. Then they arrived in Fortana, the city where the nobles live. That is the walled city, and this is Ars's first adventure. The boy notices that everything is very lively, and the merchant tells him to take a look around. People are building, and that is why there is a growing demand for bricks. They are destroying and rebuilding part of the wall to expand the city, but there weren't enough bricks even if they reused them. Ars asks if the merchant thinks that demand will continue, and he says yes. But the city is capable of making its own bricks, so soon they should be able to meet the demand. Ars won't be able to spend much more time selling his bricks. In that case, the boy needs to make good deals with those nobles. A dapper man introduces himself as Raymond and says he is a negotiator for House Fontana. Ars, the merchant, and Yahello kneel before the man. The MC is outraged because he thought he would see the nobles and enter their houses. In any case, it's not as if the nobles had any reason to meet them personally. Raymond asks if that creature is a horse that can be ridden. The merchant says yes. Then he says they are high-quality creatures and can even be ridden in armor. They are happy to present Mr. Fontana with that work creature. Raymond asks who that child is. The merchant introduces Ars as the one responsible for bringing those things to life, and the man next to him as his father. Raymond says that apparently that work monster creation will last a long time, and the merchant agrees, saying that this species is named Valkyrie. Moreover, he would be grateful to receive authorization to produce and sell that species. Meanwhile, Ars reflects that Valkyrie is the name of the first and not the whole species. The true Valkyrie is taking care of the village, and there is no chance he will sell her. Raymond says he will sign their permission later. Furthermore, he will inform Mr. Fontana about that. Then he tells them to keep working hard. The merchant agrees, and Ars wonders if the negotiation ended there. Raymond coughs lightly and says that in any case, those creatures will not be useful in war. The merchant questions why. Raymond observes that the horns are inconvenient and it is impossible to wield a sword or a weapon with them in the way. Then he calls one of the employees. Next, he tells them to cut the horn off. Ars is shocked by that decision. He tries to get up, but his father holds him back. The MC cannot understand how Raymond is capable of hurting those creatures he just received. The boy grits his teeth in anger. He cannot do anything at that moment. Later, they went to the inn. The little boy's father tries to say that he did well, but the boy can only think that his creatures were hurt. Yahello says that first of all, the boy should go wash his hands. He can hardly believe that the creature's horns were cut off. They made no noise. People say that the first step to training a guide dog is to teach it not to bark. The best guide dogs don't make noise even if you burn them with a cigarette. The dog is man's best friend and can go as far as they wish. For Ars, the creatures he was creating function in the same way. The little boy cries nonstop. His father tells him to stay calm, and Ars questions whether he isn't outraged as well. Yahello explains that he is more concerned about the fact that those creatures will live little than about their horns. They will likely be blamed if the beasts die quickly. Ars reflects on the possibility of the creatures living less without the horns, but he doesn't even know what their life expectancy is. Ars tells his father that the man is quite calm, and Yahello responds by saying that he is just placing himself in his social position as a farmer. His father is a farmer without any kind of education, but that doesn't mean he is stupid. There are things that Yahello knows that he does not. The boy is a child who cleared the forest in a short time. It wouldn't be a surprise if everyone saw this in a terrible way. Even so, his father desperately tried to persuade the population, even reaching out to the ruler of those lands. Since they had a large number of creatures, they needed to plant a lot to feed them. Even so, the amount they produced was not enough. The breeding of beasts like those and the cultivation of the forest was something that even the nobles wanted, so it didn't take long for them to receive the license to sell. Ars's father speaks to him. Since they went to the city, they should take the opportunity to buy the things they need. Ars was lucky to be born to a father he can count on. This makes him a very lucky boy. They walk through the middle of the city. The little boy says he hasn't seen any wooden buildings and questions whether they are not popular. Yahello says that wooden houses usually catch fire easily because of the magical power. That's also why the city has buildings with so few windows. It's not necessary since the lighting comes from magic. The boy notices that everything is related to that magic, and Ashley says that it is all thanks to God's divine protection. Those basic magics are given after receiving a name from the magic circle. The boy wonders if the power really comes from there. Then Mac has an idea about the windows. Since they are used to that difficult style, replacing the windows with some made of glass could be a great idea. If he uses some spells, he will soon be able to create several windows, and there will be enough demand with the constructions. The merchant observes that Ars is very ambitious, and his father agrees, saying that he always surprises him. Even the village only survives thanks to that little boy. It was not uncommon to die of hunger before. There were years of people continuously dying and the land going to ruin. This was in a time of constant war. It reached the point where people fought each other to get food. During that time, he found a certain food. Even though radishes were found everywhere in that land, they tasted terrible and were not easy to eat. But this time he felt a different flavor. Although the taste remained awful, it was nothing inedible, besides being large and firm. Even the growth speed was accelerated. At that moment, he had no doubt that the number of people dying would decrease if he had more radishes. He heard that this new type of radish was coming from a village further north of the forest, and when he arrived, he was shocked. In those days, the whole village was dark, empty, and hungry. But there it was very different. It was then that Ars called the merchant. He offered those sandals. It was a little boy who hadn't even been baptized yet. Ars was different among the farmers and asked him several questions about things he could do. After buying a large quantity of radishes and sandals, he passed by several farms encouraging them to cultivate that plant. The merchant thought he should leave soon. He was fascinated by the little boy from the village to the north. A few years later, the same boy tried to sell him something different from sandals. The man was impressed. They were the mushrooms that grew in the forests, which the man had only mentioned to Ars. Those mushrooms could be sold for a high price, and the village that had nothing to offer seemed promising. Even so, children should not enter the forest. The man was concerned and warned Ars, saying that he shouldn't keep going into the forest at such a young age. The little boy said he would be fine. The merchant met many children who also said that and ended up dying. He proposed to buy bricks from the little boy so that he wouldn't have to face danger. Then Ars came up with a new invention. They were cutlery, plates, cups, and mugs. The merchant said that was incredible and asked how the little boy made it, but the MC said it was a secret. After inspecting quite a bit, the merchant came to a suspicion about that little boy. The boy is probably of noble birth, but that is a secret. He believes that all those goods were inherited by the boy and that he might be from the fallen family, but the man is completely wrong. They met again, and this time the boy had been baptized, and Ars managed to surprise him once again. The egg that the boy cultivated turned into a wonderful horse-type monster. The most incredible thing about Ars is his inspiration. Instead of stagnating with bricks and mushrooms, he always looks for new things to sell. Ars becomes reflective and tells the merchant that he wants weapons to go to war. The man feels that now he understands everything. Ars must want to restore the fallen family, which is struggling in the military battle, and he is probably hiding in that village with a family that is not his. In any case, Ars is undoubtedly an important person. With the aim of establishing a relationship with the boy, the merchant decided to hire the child's services just for himself. Over time, he will probably recover everything and return to nobility. Ars calls the merchant from his delirium. Then he asks what is happening since they were going to buy things in the streets. The man tells them to go. He is willing to serve the boy on any occasion, and his life began to revolve around Ars. When they return from the trip, Ogrim shouts for Ars. It is about her mother, who is very happy to see her. She greets her with a warm hug. After spending a few days in the city buying everything they needed, they return to the village. There, they even managed to get a large saw to clear the fallen trees that were left, as well as a cart for transport and a drink that her father wanted. The money he made from that first sale seems to be running out, and it was only for that one time. From then on, the money from the sale of creatures will start coming in more easily. The boy already has a basket full of eggs to cultivate. Ars decided to trade the Valkyrie monster for the same price as a selling dragon. Precious and expensive creatures are called property, as if he were making them exclusive, just like a collection of luxury cars. But there is something he needs to do to keep that business going. The beasts he delivered to the Fontana family had their horns cut off. The boy needs to find out what the effect of having the horns cut off is. One of the two will have its horns ripped off and the other will not, to serve as a comparison. In his past life, the boy used to cut the horns off goats to prevent them from getting hurt in a fight, so he believes it is okay to do that. In any case, he needs to see those creatures as servants that provide comfort for people. Ari apologizes to the creature and asks it not to be angry. The boy changed his mind about that and cut off the horns. A few days passed. All the creatures seemed to be fine, including the one that lost its horns. But something was different. It seemed to be trying and not able to do something. Ari soon realized that creatures without horns cannot use magic. The boy accumulates mana in his eye. Both the horned monster and the one without horns retain their magical power, but apparently, one of them can no longer use it. Indeed, the same thing happens with humans. According to the stories from his parents, those who lose both hands can no longer use magic. This happens because it is necessary to accumulate mana in a small enough extremity, and without fingers, it is not possible to do that. The same rule must apply to the horns. If you cut them, it is no longer possible to use magic, and this information could be useful to him. The street vendor said he had never heard of any beast that could use magic causing problems. But something more important is happening. If the Valkyrie continues to hatch the eggs with her magical injection, the exclusivity of the species will no longer exist. Even after cutting the creature's horns apparently, its life is still normal. Ars decided to cut the horns off all the horses and deer he was going to sell. Someone asked the boy if he didn't bring something amazing. The boy asks if the priest is referring to the Fontana family's permission, and he confirms. Even so, the man is not talking about the license to sell monsters. In that empty village, the only thing he saw written appropriately was the baptism session book. So on rainy days when he can't go to the fields, he goes to the church to learn to read. The priest says that the document recognizes the clean forest as the property of Ars. The boy says that his father takes care of him and won't mind that his taxes are paid in wheat. The priest explains that the grandeur of that document is not just in the taxes, and Ars asks if the letter said anything that significantly changes the situation. The priest asks where the land is that the young man cleared, and the MC explains that it is in the middle of the forest among the trees. The priest says that there is nothing there stating when or where to measure the lands, and paying taxes with money means that. It doesn't need to be a farm in the first place, and there are no indications of what the land is being used for. So the priest summarizes by saying that the Fontana family treated him as a dominant. Ars is just as confused. The Fontana family dominates all their territory but cannot control everything that happens, and in exchange for great privileges, people are appointed to govern. It is common for families to pay money in exchange for the privilege given to them and to send soldiers in case of emergency. Ars questions what it means to be from a dominant family, and the priest explains that they were probably trying to prevent the boy from going elsewhere to raise those creatures. They probably thought that by dealing with that Fontana land, he would be tied to the place and not to his older brother. Moreover, he probably never thought that Ars, who was just a child, would be capable of opening the land and extending it beyond the family rules. Ars notes that this is an impossible area for a normal child to clear, and before he realized it, he changed jobs to administrator or ruler. The boy observes that it is very easy to expand the land when you are underestimated. Even so, what he needs to do now is explore. He rides Valkyrie and walks through the forest using magic to care for the soil and fell trees. Those without horns drag the logs of wood to another place. The boy levels all the barren land with land leveling, but even if he increases his lands, the profits will not change. With those 4 letters up his sleeve, he should be able to make money. Selling domestic beasts is enough, but he needs a second alternative. The magical mushrooms and field crops require more labor. Ars concludes that he needs to hire some people because he can't do it alone. He needs someone to cultivate the mushrooms or take care of the field. Before exploring, he needs to find a part-time employee. As always, he consulted his family to see if there was anyone in the village who could help him. Ars's brother tells his younger brother not to forget about him. Immediately, the boy jumps at that job opportunity, but the boy refuses. Ars's brother insists, and he asks if their mother agrees. The woman hesitates. Then she says that as long as both continue helping at home, it's all right. Ars reflects that if his brother works seriously, there is nothing to complain about, but he doesn't think that will happen. He is anxious because he already knows Beto, who usually prefers to nap and escape his responsibilities, but if he does that at work, he will have to be fired. The MC asks what Beto wants, and the boy is already decided. He wants Ars to give him a Valkyrie. He says it's not fair that only Ars can ride one, and the boy says he noticed that his brother has been trying to ride without permission. Then he questions if Beto really likes Valkyries. The boy says that every man who is called a hero rides a Valkyrie to save the princess. Any man is enchanted by that idea. That's how Ars hired his brother as his first employee. As soon as he arrives at Ars's hideout, Beto says that the place is quite shabby and looks more like a prison. The first thing he did was criticize the place. This really doesn't paint Ars in a good light. He is a man who grows every day. Now it's time to test his skills since he has always had an interest in architecture. He liked the hotel they stayed at for the night in the city. Moreover, Ars paid close attention to the details of its exterior and arrangements. And he doesn't mean just observation. Ars used his mana to inspect the rooms. Now he just needs to activate his memory preservation magic. To exemplify what he did, it's like using computer graphics to create a building model. He worked on memorizing the entire building without leaving any room behind. He fainted from lack of mana when he tried to inspect the building for the first time. His hypothesis about why he failed is regarding the flat surfaces and volumes. He should have only mapped the walls but filled the entire cube. On the second attempt, he sent his mana through the blocks and only memorized the structure that makes up the building. If he hadn't wasted mana filling all the empty spaces, he could recreate the entire hotel at once. It's not easy to recreate by observation. However, recreation via memory shouldn't be that difficult. First, he needs to send his mana to the ground, creating building blocks. Then he will recreate a form of mana that he memorized. Finally, he will shape it so that the blocks mold together. Ars is impressed. He managed to build what he wanted. The experimental recreation of the hotel was a success. The establishment had that square shape because it was in the city, but Ars could add extra things like a stable for the Valkyries and a storage place. However, creating from imagination ends up leaving gaps like that. Perhaps he needs to create the extensions separately. He copied the architecture that was designed by a professional, so it must be very safe. Although he can't replicate the doors or anything made of wood, that should be enough. Being able to build something large like that in a single attempt shows how much he has grown. The boy plans to move his base to that building soon. Ashla asks for a moment with her son, and the boy asks what is happening. The man talks about the lumberjacks. Some time passes, and the lumberjack asks what Ars is doing there so early and if he is looking for magical mushrooms. The little boy says that's not quite it. He heard that the lumberjacks were furious because he was cutting down trees. His relationship with Maddock is old since he started supplying the magical mushrooms. Maddock observes that this is why the boy went to his territory. To avoid unnecessary conflicts with the lumberjacks, Ars decided to consult Maddock, who understands the matter. He brought a little drink for the man. His father almost made a scene because he had to give up the liquor. Maddock says it's an exaggeration to say that they are furious, but they don't like how Ars acts. The boy observes that the problem must be because he is cutting down too many trees. The boy is determined to continue cutting down trees to expand his territory, but they can make an arrangement. Ars suggests deforesting only outside their territory. He can also venture deeper into the forest to get his logs. Maddox says that sounds like a good idea. However, apparently, the boy still hasn't understood the essence of the problem. Ars asks if it's not about the lumberjacks and reflects that perhaps it's a problem that he is using the Valkyries or that he did all that alone. The MC asks if the lumberjacks are insecure about their professions, but the bearded man says no. Ars's actions are condemning the pride and dignity they have for their work. That is the reason for the disapproval. The MC says he never disrespected the lumberjacks, and Maddock asks if the kid doesn't understand. They were born as lumberjacks, raised in lumberjack homes, and educated to be this way until the day they die. They usually take pride in the work of cutting trees. For them, trees are a means of livelihood, but also treasures, so they don't think good things about those who cut down trees unnecessarily. So what does Ars think they will feel seeing the boy cutting down trees and leaving them there to rot? His actions could make him be seen as disrespectful regarding the pride of the lumberjacks for their way of life. Ars is silent for a moment. Then he says he understands. Maddox says that taking logs as material to evolve the city is something they also want, and understand that Ars has obligations regarding the burgers. That's why none of them spoke to the boy until now. Even though they are bothered, they just want the boy to understand the consequences of his actions. The boy concludes that probably his father heard that from Maddox himself, and they are trying to solve the problem before it becomes something bigger. The boy became so obsessed with evolving that he didn't pay attention to the people around him. Ars is quite thoughtful. Maddox likes the fact that the boy still pays attention to what people have to say, even with exceptional powers. Then the boy asks if Maddox wants to help him with his work. The boy wants to start forest management immediately. The forest to the north of the village is so large that people don't even know its true size. Despite this, with Valkyrie's help, he was able to significantly reduce the size of the forest, but deforestation is a serious problem. The soil will lose its ability to retain water and nutrients. If the situation worsens, that whole place could turn into a desert in the future. The problem knocking at the door is that they won't have enough firewood if this continues. Thus, they won't survive the winter. Ars says that is why he really wants to create a responsible administration for reforestation. Planting trees with adequate spacing between them will ensure they can absorb enough light. Thus, they will have trees. The boy says he has knowledge about agriculture but doesn't understand about the forest. So experts like Maddox and other lumberjacks would be of great help. This arrangement may be sufficient to meet both his and the lumberjacks' needs. Maddox says that the forces of nature should not be used according to what humans want. Ars asks if the man understands that there are advantages to reforestation, and Maddox says he will discuss it with the others. Maddox was able to persuade the group of lumberjacks by saying it would be better for them to accept than to let Ars tamper with the forest as he pleased. After that event, the north of the village came under Ars's care, and this became a consensus. After a while, Ars gets excited because he has several tree trunks to cultivate mushrooms. He is grateful to Maddox because he can now expand his cultivation. Maddox was put in charge of managing the forest. Ars left the doors and properties of the place with the locksmith. He left the care of the plants to his brother Beto. However, the number of people increased rapidly. To Ars's surprise, Beto was very good at managing people. The MC asks one of them where his brother is. The boy replies that he went to practice riding on the beasts. Ars notices that Beto left all his work on the shoulders of other people, so he apologizes to the man and the child, who tell him not to worry. By helping with that planting, they also benefit by receiving a share of the harvest. That little boy lost his parents because of the war, and he is a man who has no job because there aren't enough vacancies in the village, so they are grateful for the opportunity. If that were under his responsibility, he would have only thought of hiring those people and paying them in cash, but his brother went beyond that. Thanks to that change, Ars was able to concentrate the evolution of work with monsters and the cultivation of magical mushrooms in the same place. Ars questions whether the field is being destroyed. Beto says they found wild boar tracks in the fields, and Maddox says they found signs of 2 adult boars and piglets. Ars says that is not a big problem. Beto questions why he is so calm about it and says it is a very serious matter because there are people refusing to work because they are afraid of the boars. Ars has had experience with boars invading the pasture, but even if they set traps, the creatures were smart enough not to fall into them. The cause of that problem is evident. It arises because the little boy decided to expand his evolution into the forest. Some trees still exist in the forest, but he removed most of them, so even the feeding ecosystem became disordered, and some animals lost their territories. Even so, Ars reflects that if he leaves the boars that are eating his crops alone, the next generation will do the same. He needs to solve that problem since he is responsible for that land and has to do it for the people who work in the fields. The boars are there eating all the crops. Hidden watching the boars, Ars is struck by how large they are, and Beto says that not even arrows can penetrate their skin. Then the MC asks his brother what they should do, and Beto says that Ars needs to solve the problem. The boy says they should talk to the bourgeois and see if they can exterminate those monsters for them. But Maddox says they will probably just tell them to deal with that problem on their own. Ars asks for some time to think about it. Then he starts heading towards the boars on Valkyrie. He tells his companion that they must do exactly as planned. The boy needs to face that creature head-on. If that huge monster attacks, they have no chance of surviving, and it will end badly. Valkyrie notices that Ars is trembling. His heart beats fast, and the horse closes its eyes. Ars feels a sensation of warmth. Then he notices that Valkyrie is waiting for him to calm down. The boy closes his eyes along with his mare. Then they continue advancing, this time more confidently. Then Valkyrie starts to run. She gallops at high speed. It is very difficult to aim while on Valkyrie's back at high speed. That's why he thought of something else. Ars fires a scattered shot towards the wild boars. The little stones hit the large creature. He shot several pebbles at once. Valkyrie continues running at high speed. Ars still hasn't managed to turn that into a spell, but is doing his best. He is still weak because he is not in contact with the ground. The wild boar lets out a roar. Then it starts to chase after Valkyrie and Ars, who flee. Valkyrie runs into the forest. The boy notices that the wild boars are quite fast. Keeping a distance from those giant creatures is very laborious. Then Ars has an idea. The key weapon of that strategy is not the stone shot he made. Ars shouts for Valkyrie to jump, using the physical enchantment. The mare moves as if she perfectly understands the boy's intentions. She is his most incredible partner. They leap from a cliff, and the sensation is like flying. Around them are several birds. Ars is amazed. They are flying. Then Valkyrie crashes to the ground. Even though they have incredible physical capabilities, the physical enchantment took it to another level. Then they hear the roars of the wild boars. Next, their footsteps. That is the trap he devised for that strategy. The wild boars fell to the bottom of the cliff lifeless. Ars doubts that after falling from that height, they have any trace of life left. The trap he made was the only one that could combine his earth magic with Valkyrie's speed. At least he plans to eat those wild boars. Then Ars tells them to go home. And that's how the boy's first battle in life ended. Beto is happy with his brother, and Maddox is impressed that the boy managed to defeat the wild boar alone. Ars says that everything will be fine from then on, and Beto questions what the boy is talking about. Then Beto says that there isn't just one giant wild boar around. Excited, the boy says he will leave the next wild boars for Ars too. The MC is outraged because it was a terrible experience for him. From then on, he was in charge of dealing with the large wild boars when they appeared. Ars continued using his scattered shots. He trains with a tree. It is dangerous to let a giant monster approach, so he needs to improve his ranged attacks. The boy picked up stones and made them very pointed to use in his attacks. Even so, the power still doesn't reach far, hitting only 20 or 30 meters. Even so, despite the evolution process of the ranged attack going well, the boy is not able to annihilate a wild boar with that. Then the MC concludes that they should find a way to protect the field. After all, the most efficient way to protect against what is outside is by using a defensive wall, a fence. The strategy is basically to surround the entire field with a wall. There is a saying that one must learn from the wisdom of their ancestors. Ars says they should start building a wall from where the field meets the forest. Moreover, it should also enclose the areas where he plans to plant in the future. A huge hole formed in the trap when one of the wild boars hit its wall, so the defense needs to be very high and strong. Excessive caution is never a bad idea. Then Ars begins to raise that wall. He raises a pillar that is 5 meters deep and 10 meters high. The boy did a great job there, but he filled it with sand, so he doesn't think it will be enough. He can only make walls of 5 meters, so he has to make several and then connect them. Even so, just like when he built the hotel, Ars feels that his mana is much greater. Even so, he can't even see the end of his plantation because it is so large. If building a wall were already a spell, he could do it much more easily. Even so, turning something into a spell takes a lot of work and time, so the hardest part is replicating the same magic. It took him a few months to realize how he could create the spell to build bricks. Even so, for the wall creation spell, he managed to do it quite quickly. He sent his mana to the structure and used memory preservation in its form. Thanks to that, reproducing the same magic over and over became easier. In this way, he managed to turn that into a spell much faster than the other things. As an addition, Valkyrie starts doing things too. Valkyries have the ability to use the same spells as Arios through their horns, so the boy took several of these creatures to help him build the wall. After quite a bit of work, Ars offers magical mushrooms to recover energy. Since the boy still doesn't know how to create a recovery potion, the mushrooms should be enough. Now they succeeded. They made a wall 4 kilometers long. Then, showing it to his brother, Ars asks what Beto thought of the wall. He says he liked it. but he doesn't know where the entrance to that place is. Ars reveals that he forgot to think about that. Baito suggests that he can make a path to the entrance to guide people. Ars had made roads, but they started to become inefficient and wobbly. Now it's time to take that as a chance to create a proper road. He will make 2 entrances, one for the village and another for the forest. About concrete and asphalt roads, they are nice but require a lot of maintenance. So he remembers that there is a type of road that can last many years. It is a road created by the Roman Empire and would probably serve well. The first step is to dig a trench where the road would be, then fill it with stones and clay. Finally, cover the hole using stone pieces. The only problem is that that type of road can only be made in a straight line, and that road is only possible after reaching a high-level technique. Inside his house, Ars is in a bad mood, and someone asks what is happening. It is Carl, his younger brother, who was appointed a few days ago. Ars says it's rare for the little boy to be there, and he replies that he came after helping at home. Carl complains that Baito and Ars always come home very late because they are always busy. Carl questions what his brother is thinking, and Ars says that the glass windows he made didn't sell. Then the little boy says that they have many of those in their storage, and their mother is already complaining about it. Ars notes that he had that inspiration for the new product when he was walking around the city. Carl says that people don't seem to have problems with the way they live, so they don't want anything new, and that's the problem. Considering the economy they have, it doesn't make sense for people to buy something that isn't strictly necessary. Even so, Ars is downcast, saying that he has nothing he can sell. Carl says that if it were him, he would want those wooden furniture. He thought everything was really cool since the last time he was there. Ars says they were made by lumberjacks. Carl says he was attracted by the strong smell of wood. Even so, the lumberjacks don't sell the furniture they make. Maybe it's because it's too heavy to carry around. The people in the city take very good care of the furniture, so there is no demand for it there. The only chance to sell would be going to the city. Ars says that Carl's idea was good, and he will talk to the lumberjacks. The boy has always looked for products that didn't come from his magic. Maybe he is being a bit extreme, but he believes that without him there, the village's economy would have collapsed. Now that Ars has expanded his lands, he should start thinking about how other people can have stability. Carl is excited and says that his brother is amazing. Ars says that Carl will also be able to do many things when he gets older, but for now, he should enjoy playing a lot. Then Carl teases him, saying that they are almost the same age, with only 2 years of difference. Then the little child tells his brother that he wants to learn magic and heard that he even taught Baito. Ars complains, saying that when he tried to teach Baito magic, their mother got angry. It all started when Baito asked Ars how he managed to carry things he couldn't. That was when he started using the physical enchantment and was doing it on his own body to test its effectiveness. He was interested in knowing if other people would feel the same effect too, and that's when he began to teach Baito to control his mana. However, Baito had no skill for earth magic. Even so, the boy acquired the physical enchantment in a short time, but he ended up using it to fight against people in the village. Ars doesn't understand those habits of children fighting, but Baito ended up becoming invincible against them. The little children were outraged and called older people to beat Baito, but the boy remained undefeated. Ars comments that with Beto's technique, he shouldn't be able to evolve so much, but since he is tall and strong, that helps. After that, Baito started coming home with various bruises. The older kids who couldn't beat him individually began to band together in gangs. Ignoring this, Baito did not back down. He kept coming back no matter how many times he was defeated. With the experience of multiple fights, his power evolved rapidly. However, their mother became very sad and started to blame herself. Baito continued to fight and left work no matter how many times they complained to him. Their mother was caught crying from time to time. Over time, there was no one left to face Baito. That's why Ars decided not to teach magic irresponsibly. Even so, if Kalos wants to learn magic, Ars can teach him since the little boy is smart and doesn't show off his muscles. Ars comments that it is possible to concentrate mana in the brain to enhance memory, calculation speed, thinking ability, and other brain functions. So teaching Kalos will make him smarter. Ars even reflected on his actions, but he does not regret it. The reason Baito is so good at beating people in the village is that he fights very well, but now he wants to focus on teaching Kalos to use his brain instead of his muscles. Ars could teach his brother to do calculations and read, and he would become the administrator that the village so desperately needs. If Kalos does well, he will really help with his work. A traveler arrives on the road. He is interested in meeting the great man who defeated the giant boar. The traveler introduces himself as Gran. He presents himself as a merchant who creates items, and he heard that the village was being attacked by giant boars and went there to confirm. Ars asks if he is from the east, and the man says that it is his birthplace. The MC questions whether it is an island of the continent. Even so, Gran says it is not exactly an island and asks if Ars knows of any place like that, but the boy changes the subject. Ars says it is good to meet him, and the carcass of the giant boar is not intact, but he can take a look if he wants. Gran says he would also like to meet the great man who managed to destroy that boar and asks if Ars knows him. The boy says it is him. The man does not seem to believe it, and Ars says he used a trap and went with his partner. Gran is indignant and says that must be a mistake. He heard that there were giant boars attacking the village near the north of the forest. Beto appears and says there were only a few boars and does not understand why that man wants to see one at this point in the game. Then Gran questions if they do not know. Giant boars have the ability to strengthen themselves. Ars says that is the reason they cannot penetrate the monster's skin, and Gran agrees. They can create various types of items from the materials that come from those boars. Ars gets excited and asks if it is possible to create a sword harder than metal using the boars. The boy is happy to have saved the carcasses. Gran has been traveling for a long time looking for good materials. Ars asks if the man is capable of creating weapons. Gran says yes, and Ars gets very excited. The man has access to the bones of adult boars and piglets. Ars asks what he thinks of that, and Gran says he needs to take a look. He says that is incredible and is truly a magical beast. Ars even managed to annihilate that boar while it was casting magic against the boy, since there are traces of mana there. If you fight a monster that possesses magic, there is a great chance the material will be of high quality. The conductivity of the mana should be much smoother. Ars gets excited because the man will make a weapon for him from the bones of that boar. Then Gran says there is a problem. The man says that to do that, he would need the right materials and has nothing he needs in that village, so it is impossible to create. Ars questions what he needs specifically. Gran says he would need a furnace that can withstand high temperatures, and the central mana of some magical beast is needed to catalyze. Ars says he understands about the furnace but does not know what central mana is. Gran explains that central mana is the part of the magical beast that allows them to use magic. Humans have central mana in their arms. Ars searches for a horn from his animals and asks if that would work. If that is useful, it just needs to solve the furnace problem. Gran gets excited and asks to see that material. Ars notices that the man is treating it as if it were a valuable antique. Gran says it is just a gamble, but he thinks it can be used. He questions whether those horns belong to the working creatures of that place, and Ars says he is impressed that the man knows about it. He says he knows there are working monsters capable of using magic, and there are places where they regularly remove the mana core to conduct research. Even so, he didn't think that this was one of those villages. Ars gets excited and asks if there are servant monsters that are capable of using magic, and Gran confirms. Creatures like those that are capable of using magic are considered Class A products. Ars reflects that he needs to rethink the price of the Valkyries, and if the merchant has been hiding this information from him all this time, he will have to pay for it. Ars questions whether they need a furnace to do that, and Gran says yes, the furnace is essential, but they will still need a few other things. The little boy says he will try to make a furnace. The bricks he made are more heat-tolerant than clay. Even so, he doesn't know what temperature those bricks can withstand because he has never tested them. But to earn a weapon, he is willing to do anything. That was what he wanted to do. But Gran told him that even by creating a furnace, they would need wind to increase the temperature. So that's why they need 2 pairs of lungs. Ars complains that he can't create that because he only masters the soil. Gran says that the boy will never earn a weapon if he doesn't move forward. Ars underestimated how much passion a creator would have for his project. Carl waits for Ars and observes that his brother hasn't returned home that day. The furnace and the artificial lung have been made. Gran says that this is incredible and that besides being a great creator with the furnace, Ars also rocked the workshop. The boy says he needs to go to sleep, but Gran says they haven't finished yet because they still need coal to use as fuel in the furnace or to make a furnace just to create coal. If they just burn the wood, it will turn to ashes. To prevent this, they need to seal the space and avoid letting the air escape. Ars creates a kind of igloo for them to make the coal. Gran says he has traveled to many places on that continent, but has never found a place that would have all the items he needed. Very excited, he puts his hand on Ars' shoulder and says it's time to light the furnace. The most important step is to take the first step. But Ars runs away as soon as he can. Gran questions where the boy is going. The MC doesn't think he can keep dealing with that. Carl gets excited when he hears his brother coming. The boy is worn out. Ars asks Carl to go after the strange man and help him. The little child questions if the guy is talking about Gran. The MC asks if he understands and says that going there will give him experience for the future. Carl asks if Ars is running away. The boy says no, and that he has even made the furnace for making coal. Ars observes that if high-quality coal is sought in that area, the value of that land will be even higher. After reaching his limit, Ars had to send his brother to deal with Gran. After a while, Ars returned and Gran spoke to him. Then he said that the mission was completed thanks to Carl's efforts. On the ground, Carl is passed out and exhausted. Then Gran explains that the little child's job was to keep increasing the temperature of the furnace. Ars feels very sorry for his brother. Gran says he has made many items over time, but something of that quality is not so common. That is one of his best works. Ars holds that sword. The blade shines like a pearl. He feels that there is a glow in that weapon. The MC observes that it is quite bright, and Gran says it is brighter than a metal sword. Even so, it is still possible to cut enemies. He can cover the sword with mana whenever he wants. Gran says he would like to leave something for Ars. It is a sword made with the tusk of a piglet. Ars questions if that is a dagger and if he should use it for self-defense, but Gran says it looks like a dagger, but that will change. A weapon made with the magic of a piglet has the attribute of growth. It feeds on mana and evolves. This means that when that dagger grows to the size of a normal sword, it will be much stronger. Gran says that sword will not grow with the mana of just one person, and it needs to pass between other people to grow as a strong weapon. That weapon is known as the Sword of Inheritance. Nobles probably had weapons like that. Ars thanks for the gift. Gran is excited and says that it's not every day a creator has access to quality materials in abundance. Then Gran says he feels very lucky to have found Ars. The little boy says he wanted to know if Gran would like to stay there and continue making items, as there is still plenty of material for him to work with. The MC takes the opportunity to ask if there is a name for that sword. Gran says that magical weapons are named by their creator. Then he says he would like the MC to call the sword Kalgatum Guram. That was how Ars acquired his first sword. Later, he went to help his younger brother. He gave Carl magical mushrooms. Gran is impressed with the amount of magical mushrooms Ars has accumulated. Ars says he didn't know mushrooms had anything to do with forging, but Gran replies that they are the most common catalyst. That place is what any craftsman has always dreamed of. For mushroom planting, Ars has a dedicated area of the wall where the sun doesn't hit. In addition, he has a lot of help from the lumberjacks. By inserting fungi into the trunks, he can harvest them after a few years. Ars says he doesn't mind Gran using the mushrooms to make weapons, but shouldn't use them all up because that is his mana stock. Then Gran says he understands, and that is the stock for making potions, but Ars explains that he doesn't know how to make a potion. He only eats the mushrooms to recover mana. Gran says that is very primitive. Then he asks if he can make a potion with that mushroom. Ars is impressed with the man's skills. The man says that using those mushrooms to make mana potions first is the best option, and Ars asks if he can watch the process. Gran says yes, he wants the boy to understand how the potion is made and even participate in the preparation. Excited, the man goes to try to wake Carl. Ars takes his brother to bed and says he can continue resting, but after he wakes up, he should come find them. Excited, Ars says it's time to start part 2 of item creation. Ars drinks the mana potion and notices it tastes like tea. It is made in the same way by boiling the mushrooms and breaking them down right after. Then it's just a matter of putting it in a jar with water and mixing well. Gran observes that thanks to the charcoal, they managed to make the mushroom boil, and Ars questions him about what kind of weapons the man plans to make with the crystallized marshmallows. He replies that he was thinking of making armor this time, and the MC gets very excited. It will be necessary to tan the armor while washing it in a magical potion. Of course, it won't be perfect, but it will be better than most armors. Ars is happy that Gran can make so many things. Then he thanks him for coming to his village. Very excited, Gran tells Ars to prepare to stay awake for the next few nights. Ars is disappointed that he won't be able to sleep properly. Ars would have died from working so much if he didn't have a recovery spell. Finally, the armor is complete. It was made from the leather of giant boars. Gran says it turned out very well, but it's not Ars's size. The boy says he will wear it after he grows up. Ignoring what he likes, it will be very useful for finding people who are failing in the fields. The armor fit Beto. Ars plans to use it when it no longer fits his brother. Very excited, Gran asks what they should do now. Ars says they should take a break, and the man goes into a crisis. Ars asks if he doesn't want to teach his employees how to make the products. Even so, Gran says he prefers to make new things. The boy reflects that he needs to find something that stirs the man's creativity. Then he says he wants him to build a building with those bricks. Gran stares at the bricks, not knowing what to do. Ars says he can't exceed the number of bricks he has there. The boy's idea is for Gran to build a creative house that the young man can use as a mold. The MC says he would like Gran to make a spacious building with those bricks and says that the place should be focused on residents. Gran considers that request interesting. Then he starts to take on the challenge. Ars is also thinking about testing something. He wants to test the materials that were made in the furnace from the horns of the Valkyries. The MC gathers all the items in one place: the mana potion, the clay, and bricks made from magic, the horn of a Valkyrie, and the tusk of a giant boar. Ars is planning to make a more resistant brick by breaking the one he has, mixing it with the clay, and building a new one. He decided to use his knowledge from his past life for that. Then he also mixes the horns and fangs into the clay and adds the potion. He made several samples with different percentages of each material. After shaping it, he placed it in the mold, but he only managed to create a mountain of flaws. Even so, Ars is determined to keep trying, and he makes another mixture. When he strikes the hammer this time, a noise echoes. The little boy looks at that. The brick is intact. Unlike the brown bricks he usually makes, here it is marbled. Just by including a catalyst and materials, he managed to create something of that caliber. He always wanted a brick as strong as metal. Ars reflects on his memories and how the sense of his past life is coming out of his imagination, and that's why he wanted to do that manually. He managed to create a brick as resistant as metal in that world. Even so, that is not the end of the experiments. Ars uses his magic while holding the brick. He establishes memory preservation to decorate the structure of the brick. Then he places both hands on the ground. Now he has a new spell for creating resistant bricks. Thus, he can create these bricks without the horns and fangs. Even so, that is still far from what the boy imagined of Roman roads. To create a Roman road, he needs to use the settling spell. He tried but couldn't do that with those hard bricks. Anyway, it's better for vehicles if the road is smooth. Now he needs to raise the sides to make sidewalks for pedestrians. When Ars meets Gran again, he has built a huge building. The boy observes that there is much more space there than he thought, and Gran says he made several windows to save materials for the building. Ars managed to finish making the roads, and Gran was very proud of his work. He made a huge door and several glass windows. Gran says that Carl told him that Ars had several glass windows that he couldn't sell. The boy observes that if Gran is making artistic architecture, he can save materials and add things to the building. The MC is impressed that the man even managed to use concepts of physics to make the best possible constructions. So he thanks Gran, saying that it is much more spacious than the hotel he made. Ars says he will pay for the boy's work, and Gran says that will be useful. Furthermore, Gran would like to ask for permission to build his own house. The man lived as a traveler, going from place to place, but he always dreamed of finding a place where he could live without any worries, and feels that this is the best option. Ars has already received other requests from villagers to build their houses within the wall, and he refused all the requests because that is the home of the Valkyries. Even so, it is not every day that one finds such an amazing creator like Gran, so Ars authorizes him. That's how Gran became the first person to live in his territory. Ars goes home to eat because his mother always cooks very tasty things. Besides, if Gran is around, there is nothing to worry about. The MC's older brother is engaged, and it is common for the eldest son to inherit the house and land. Even so, it is very early since he is only 14 years old, and the house is getting small. If their father dies, the house and land will be handed over to his older brother, who will then pass everything to his eldest son. His family lives very well with each other. That's why Ars loves being with them. Mary asks if Ars wants another serving. The boy was prepared to be independent since he was 5 years old. He asks for another serving from his mother and extends his bowl. He decided to leave his parents' house. He wants to start by preparing the land for development. To begin, he will move the base further south from the wall to the middle of the land. Then he will recreate the house that Gran built using his mana. However, he will replace the common bricks with the super-resistant brick, making it look like a house made of marble. Using his super-resistant bricks, he can build a wall 1 kilometer around his house. He then intends to pave roads leading from the center to the exits. Ars planned to place Gran's house to the south near the village, but he is really a very enthusiastic creator. He has already built his own house after receiving permission, and Ars plans to save that design using his power. The MC also built some inns near the road to Beto. He also wanted to leave home, so he is sharing the hotel and renting the rooms to people who work in the fields. Ars decided that the forest further north would be the reforestation area where the lumberjacks could work and the den could be made. Thus, Matic and the others should be moved to that area. The northern forest still needs a lot of evolution in the future. The central area is Ars's home, and contains the living place of the Valkyries, as well as the cultivation of magical mushrooms. He does not plan to let horned Valkyries leave the midst. This is how Ars developed the development plan for that land. When he finished the partitions and was about to move his house, he was already 9 years old. The merchant appears outraged that Ars gave part of his lands to a traveler. He questions why the boy didn't tell him anything, and the MC replies that he didn't know a merchant needed land. Then the man says he wasn't planning to live traveling forever and wants to build his own shop. For that, he wants Ars to give him land too. Remembering something, the little boy says that the merchant lied to him when he said there were no beasts that used magic. The man questions if they are not even, since he also didn't know that Valkyries used magic. Ars learned that those creatures possess magic and are considered luxury items, but since he had only sold hornless Valkyries until then, they cannot use magic. Then the boy says he will let the merchant open his shopping center there. The MC says he would love it to be a food store, and the merchant says he will think about that. Then he says he has something to tell the boy. There is a rumor circulating that there is a group of dangerous people in those lands. They are talking about Ars. The boy is being considered someone very dangerous. The MC is indignant because he is very pure and angelic. Then he says he hasn't done anything dangerous. The merchant says he suddenly raised a huge fortress with walls. Thinking from this perspective, the nobles who govern the area may be dissatisfied with that appearance. It is almost time to pay the taxes. So the collectors will appear soon, and Ars needs to be ready to answer all their questions. They didn't ask many things the last time they collected the taxes. The MC asks what the man is saying, and he shouts that he shouldn't need to repeat himself. That land will be declared the property of Fontana. They will take that place, and if Ars decides to resist, he could be arrested. Taxes are collected every year. The villagers gather wheat in one deposit and then send a representative to deliver all that wheat to the collector. Ars has always paid his taxes with gold because the tax collectors have always come to his house to collect the payment, so he needed to show some hospitality. Usually he just dines before collecting the gold and leaves. Now Ars's territory would be collected by the Fontana family, and any resistance he presented would be an affront to the bourgeoisie. That was what the merchant was talking about. The tax collector said that there are many dangerous individuals in that region, so Ars will also benefit from the protection of the royal family, especially because he is raising important creatures. For people, protecting the Valkyries may seem like the best move. Even if their freedom is restricted, he will never have to worry about food or war again. He should be happy since he was just a poor child who grew up in that village. However, he is indifferent. He has memories of a free and rich world from his past life, and now he no longer wants to live in confinement. Suddenly, a loud noise is heard. The tax collector questions what that is. Ars realizes that the noise came from the stable, so he runs to help the Valkyries. The MC hears his brother shouting for something not to move. When he arrives, he is shocked. Carl is thrown on the ground with a Valkyrie. A young man questions what Ars wants. The man has a sword and asks if the MC is going to get in his way too. He was about to grab that creature when Carl jumped on him. Then he quickly prepared to attack Ars with his huge sword. Ars becomes agitated. Suddenly, Beto enters the room calling for his brother. He is worried about Ars and Carl. The MC begins to awaken. Carl is fine but remains unconscious. Apparently, the Valkyrie protected him. He has a wound on his head, but it is nothing too serious. Beto questions how Ars is. The boy becomes tense. He remembers the moment when the man raised the sword to finish him off. At that moment, his power awakened. In a quick and precise attack, he struck the young man's belly. His blow pierced the man who fell to the ground. Ars says he is fine. He didn't receive a scratch. Beto says he is not referring to his physical injuries, but Ars is not willing to talk about it. Beto says their father is going to try to talk to the people who are waiting to hear, and he should join after Carl wakes up. Ars is happy that his brother didn't insist on the subject. He used the stone shot on the soldier without any fear, and he died instantly. Not even the merchant knows how Ars will get out of that. If that soldier came back and reported the incident with the Fontana family, they would probably bring the army there. Ars wonders if he can't just run away. Gran says they can try to go to another land governed by another nobility. If they have problems with the Fontanas, then they will have an ally. They should be very happy to keep Ars around since he can cultivate working monsters. The problem is that the treatment in this new place won't be different from what the Fontana family gave. If a common person goes to a noble, is it too much to ask for freedom? Beto says they are crazy, and if the army is coming, they have no choice but to fight back. He questions if Ars is really calm about having his land stolen. What would be the point of him having worked so hard since childhood? Besides, he killed a soldier. Next time, Carl might not survive, and the soldiers could end up killing them all, so there's no reason not to fight. Ars says that no matter how much magic he has, he can't fight against an army, and Beto shouts for him not to be stupid. His brother is willing to fight with him, and says that it is the duty of the older brother to protect the younger one. Besides, he can ride a Valkyrie with much more skill. Maddox says he will also join, because he can't just stand by watching a child who is almost like his grandson being killed. He is willing to stand by Ars if the boy decides to fight. When he started reforestation, the wood management, the furnace, the charcoal, the lumberjacks stopped having to worry about putting food on the table. Ars became the centerpiece for the lumberjacks. They will owe their lives to the boy forever. The little boy hugs Maddox and thanks him. His father takes a deep breath. He says that if everyone is willing to go that far, he, as a father, will not be left behind. As Ars's father, he decided that he will also be by his side. It is his duty as a father to protect his family. Ars honestly never thought he would have even one ally willing to risk his life. The merchant says that if this is what everyone is going to do, he will help too. He can gather information from the others. Ars questions if merchants only do things when they are going to receive a reward, and the man says that if the boy leaves, he can no longer sell the creatures. Besides, he feels the same about that old man. In any case, he believes in Ars and he should reflect on gaining support. The boy is very good at thinking about things like that. The MC says that when all this is over, he will prepare a huge land for the merchant. The only reason he enjoys life is that he was free. It's about that. Everyone there is willing to fight for his freedom, to protect his family and protect that place and everyone who lives there. For freedom, Ars will fight against the nobles. He needs to start acquiring people. If he pays someone money, they will probably run away when things get tough. He needs to find volunteers, maybe a reward associated with going against the nobles. Ars says he has decided that there will be a reward for the cooperators. This way, there will be motivation to risk their lives. The reward will be his only magic, the improvement of the soil, leveling it, and creating large-scale walls. Those who have been following the boy understand how incredible this reward is. He says that through the naming ceremony, it is possible to acquire that magic, and he will name himself as Ars Baruka from then on. That village will be called Baruka, and everyone there will have their last names changed to Baruka. From then on, they will be known as the Baruka family. Maddox starts to say that this is a bit much, but if they are going to fight against the Fontana family, they need to elevate their own status for a negotiation to be considered. The boy's father says he has never heard of anyone besides the priest who could conduct the naming ceremony. As far as they know, that is impossible. Even so, Ars's trump card is the magic circle. Ars says that if they stay by his side, they will be named Baruka. The risk of the magic circle ceremony is that there are many unknown factors. For example, the risk of using the magic circle on a person who already has a name, and that's why he decided to make Baruka a surname instead of changing the name. Ars creates the magic circle in front of him. Then he names Beto, Ashira, and Tryon with the surname Baruka. He does the same with Maddox and Gran, all in the name of Ars Baruka. Everyone there must be named. The only memory Beto has of his childhood is that he felt very hungry. The family had to use all their supplies to pay the fees. In the midst of all this, his 3-year-old brother started working in the fields. At that time, Beto reflected that he was wasting his energy on something that would never work. But Ars managed to get a super fertile land. Beto never understood how he did that, but the success was noticeable. Moreover, he became stronger than Beto himself, even being 2 years younger. The boy never understood how Ars got so strong. It was then that his brother told him his method without thinking twice. Beto didn't understand everything because it's very difficult, but apparently, the trick is to accumulate mana in the body. He practiced body strengthening to help in the fields while Ars was busy conducting maintenance to expand the size of the place. People began to appear shocked because they discovered that Ars was maintaining the Ashira fields. They wanted the boy to help them too. On that occasion, Ars said he couldn't do that because he had other obligations. Thanks to this incident, everyone in the village began to say that he was a bad person. The adults didn't show it, but Beto heard people saying that Ars only cared about himself and was a bad person. They were planning to get rid of the boy. Ars is almost better than Beto in a fight, but it's true that he doesn't understand what the boy is thinking most of the time. Even so, Ars continues to be his younger brother. He decided to deal with anyone who spoke ill of him and planned to hurt him. He felt bad leaving his mother worried because he came home hurt a few times. Even so, he couldn't let people who wanted to harm his brother go unpunished. The MC says he is focusing too much on the punch. To fight better, he needs to focus on his waist and hips. Beto was outraged by the mockery because he was fighting for his brother. Ars knew how to use his body appropriately, and Beto had already tried to fight him several times. So Beto trained with the motivation that Ars gave him about never losing again to opponents who were not older than him. As he got stronger, he gained followers. Meanwhile, Ars was taking care of eggs to generate more monsters and offer them to the nobility. He even destroyed a giant boar that was trying to destroy the village. Beto believes that his brother is amazing, but is not willing to lose to him. He has been practicing how to gallop on the Valkyrie and use a sword simultaneously. With that, he became stronger. He wants to be able to defeat a giant boar, and he doesn't want to fight to lose to the knights. All of this because he is Ars's older brother. A magic surrounds Beto. Ars falls to the ground exhausted. That magic is too strong for his mentality. Tryon is in shock. Gran says that was an incredible magic, and Beto says that Ars is very wonderful. The little boy observes and says that apparently he succeeded. Beto can become even stronger thanks to that. The boy wants them to talk to the villagers to join their forces. They need to tell everyone that the nobles are planning to steal their land and everything they have. Moreover, they are planning to kill Karl and Ars. They are going to fight to protect their own rights and themselves from those nobles and their tyranny. The boy hopes to count on everyone there, and anyone who rises with their family will receive their magic and part of their land. Ars wants them to appeal to their emotions, showing that there will be merit in helping him. Beto leaves immediately, saying he will handle it, and Maddox says he will talk to the other lumberjacks. The MC talks to the trio, hoping he can get more information. The man says he will look for data on the enemy troops. Then he extends his hand to Ars and says he will leave that with him and for the boy to be careful. Tryon has a very serious look. He tells Ars to be careful not to die. The boy squeezes his hand back and agrees. The boy did not live expecting to receive that kind of phrase, but facing the nobles being from a family of farmers is something very out of the ordinary. Even so, he will have to think of a backup plan in case he cannot gather enough people. Usually, they take 50 people to war at a time. Compared to that, 78 people is quite a lot. Maddox says that the lumberjacks agreed to help as well, and since they are strong, they can help a lot. Beto is also very popular among the youth and managed to attract them. The boy keeps grumbling even though he was the one who gave them jobs. There is a big factor. The young man tells Mary that he is going where Ars is and asks Era to take care of their mother. Someone asks if everything is alright and speaks with Hector. Hector says that they will be fine as long as Ars is by their side. He is the boy's brother who married too early. The main reason for this is that she was the chief's daughter. Ars reflects that probably her father thought he would give her land if she married Hector. The village of Baruka has transformed. Ars used his magic circle power on everyone who appeared there. People are happy because that will make work on the farm much easier. They are very grateful to Ars, but the boy is exhausted. Beto questions his brother if he has finished naming everyone. The MC says yes, but only managed to do so thanks to the recovery potion. His brother Beto questions what that outfit is, and Ars says that Hector brought it for him. It was their mother who made it. She planned to give it to him for his birthday, but changed her mind because of the war that is going to happen soon. Agitated, Beto says it is time for them to go and catch the enemies by surprise, but Ars wants his brother to be a little more patient. Then Beto questions what they should do at that moment since it is kind of stupid to just wait. Ars says they should wait for the merchant to return with some information. The boy reflects that it is not possible to protect 100 people along 4 kilometers of wall. The walls he made were designed against giant boars and not human infiltrations. His fighting power will probably be stronger than that of the farmers in the first place. Ars hurries and says they must advance. Beto is very excited. Then the boy says that despite this, they are not going to the city. They will move to nearby villages to the south. The idea is to explain the reasons why they want to confront the nobles. Many people may find the war unnecessary. Even so, there are still many victims of hunger and hypothermia. These are people who no longer like the nobles who collect heavy taxes while ignoring hunger. Ars approaches the other village. Everyone is very agitated and does not seem to want to hear what he has to say. The boy's father says he thinks every village would act that way if someone arrived so armed. Everyone looks at Ars with hatred. Ars notices that they ended up entering the village's territory without informing what they wanted there. Then someone shouts for him. A boy with a huge sword questions what they want. Ars notices that a sword as large as his size is quite rare. Those farmers use tridents as weapons, and it is very rare for them to have a real sword. Even from an economic standpoint, most people would choose a weapon that uses less metal and not such a large sword. Ars's father notices that the boy is Vargas. He is regarded as a hero in that area and made his name in several wars. He had left but is apparently back. Things seem to be getting tough if Ars doesn't think of something soon. Then Baido starts shouting that the Fontana family is extending its tyranny over the residents of Baruca. They are not interested in succumbing to the nobles' oppression, so everyone there should join them. Vargas points his sword at Baido. Even so, the boy is equipped with armor made of giant boar leather. Moreover, he is mounted on a Valkyrie. No one will think that the boy is the second son of a farming family. The pressure Vargas exerts is relevant, but Baido's equipment is not far behind. Now they can speak on equal terms. Vargas asks Baido if he is the great one from Baruca who defeated the boars. Baido says it is not him and calls Ars. Then he says it was his younger brother who faced those giant creatures. Vargas says that is a funny joke. He says he could laugh about that for hours and tells the little group to go back home. Baido gets stressed and shouts for them to cooperate, in addition to saying that Vargas is the person who should take responsibility instead of playing with his fantasies. The two start shouting at each other, very upset. It seems that things are going to end in a fight. Then Ars decides to intervene with his attack. He launches pebbles at high speed against the ground, then he asks everyone to lower their weapons. Ars is completely determined. Then he says he is there only for a peaceful conversation. Vargas is impressed that it was a magic attack. Then he says that if the boy is planning to attack him, he will take him down. Vargas runs towards Ars, and the MC is worried because he thought the boy would stop. He is very fast when he runs. If Ars doesn't stop his movement somehow, he will be in danger. The MC lands a pebble attack near Vargas, but the man manages to dodge and counter with his sword. Ars can hardly believe he blocked his attack and showed no hesitation in his movement. Apparently, Vargas analyzed that Ars has to turn his hand in the direction he will launch his attack. If it continues like this, it will be a big problem. The young man understands how everyone in that village owes Vargas. Ars keeps trying to attack him over and over again. The boy's father says that Vargas is not someone he will be able to defeat this way. If it continues like this, he will just waste all his mana. The young man aimed where he thought Vargas would not defend, and he hoped that area would have the best impact. Then he hit Vargas squarely. Even so, the man cut the trajectory, running towards it. Vargas stops right in front of Ars. Now he has caught the boy. The MC can hardly believe that Vargas took no damage. But maybe this is the ability to become more resistant. He can do something similar with his physical enchantment. Apparently, Vargas acquired the ability to improve his defense in battle. Ars smiles after understanding. Then he prepares to use his power again. He hits Vargas squarely in the chest, making the man fly. Vargas's sword breaks and falls to the ground. People are astonished by that. Ars says the winner has been decided. Vargas must surrender. Then the guy asks what that was that hit him. He is lying on the ground. Ars explains that it was a shot of pebbles. That's why he kept using those attacks against the counterattack. Ars is very happy to find someone with a similar ability to his. Moreover, he is happy to have tested the efficiency of his strike against people who really have battle experience. Vargas placed his sword in front of his body as a shield to reduce the damage. Now he needs a man like Vargas. Ars extends his hand to the man, who takes his hand and stands up. The guy says he surrenders but asks Ars not to hurt the villagers. Those are not Ars's intentions. Even so, it is a thought to consider since his people are all armed. Ars says he does not plan to hurt anyone. He just wants to join them to fight against the nobles. Vargas promises to fight alongside Ars. Meanwhile, in the kingdom, someone says that the disturbance was due to his negligence. Now he will take his own army to Villa Baruca. He swears to do this in the name of the Fontana family. A brick is created. Vargas observes that he never imagined he would be able to use magic that way. Ars named Baruca for all those in the village who wanted to join him. It is very good that the sense of unity is forming among those people, even though the fight with Vargas was unexpected. The result is that he was able to show his fighting ability to unite everyone for the same cause. Ars defeated Vargas the hero. Ars must be really strong. Then they should be able to defeat the nobles if they are with him. There were probably people who planned to abandon him if they were at a disadvantage, but after the fight with Vargas, that changed. Everyone is filled with the feeling of fighting for their own freedom. Vargas asks the general what the next step is. Ars is confused about the general, and Vargas says he is talking about him. He was able to recruit all those people, so he is the general there. Ars says that people only approached because of Vargas, so Vargas should be the general. To him, the people who are by his side are very important. The reason Ars decided to distance himself from his own village was to protect his friends as well. The decision to go to the neighboring village was the best possible. Ars says they will camp there. There is a river between Baruca and the capital of Fontana. Ars observes that the Fontana family will have to pass through that area before reaching the village of Baruca. Since the water is violent, there are only a few places where it is possible to cross. Ars says it's time to prepare the camp and shouts for everyone to use the ground leveling because he is going to build the platforms. It has turned into a village of little houses. There are more than 100 people, but they should be able to accommodate everyone with that. The next step is to build defensive walls. The people use the power to create walls. It is much easier when everyone can use that magic without him needing to teach it. When Ars uses the power of the naming ceremony, all information about magic in his brain passes to others. Even so, there are people who cannot use wall creation. Besides being unable to do so, they also cannot process the information. Ars observes that the same situation happened with the road settlement. When he looks closely, he sees that those people have low mana. Wall and road creation uses much more mana compared to other spells. When Ars tried to use spells beyond his own mana, he also failed because the information is not properly processed. Ars does not know if it is a limitation of the receiver or his magic circle, but people can only acquire the magic that their mana can handle. Now the boy wants to try to find out if this ability to cast spells is altered when they gain mana. Gran says he has something to show the boy. He made a specially designed armor vest for him. The piece turned out amazing despite being made at the last minute. After the battle with Vargas, Ars realized it was very risky to be on the front lines without the appropriate equipment. Vargas swings the sword, saying it is too shiny for his taste, but he is not going to be choosing what to use on the battlefield. Ars handed the more durable swords to the people close to him since they understand Ars's requests and can give instructions to the others in the village. Ars created a strong base and also solved the equipment problem. Only one thing is left. Ars is in shock. Tryon said that the enemies have 500 people. Generally, the people in Baruka are about 50, and it is concerning that they face a number 10 times greater. It is impossible not to be shocked by the 500 enemy troops. Gran observes that just the fact that Ars built that base and brought all those people there, he has already exceeded the Fontana family's expectations. Even so, the difference in numbers is quite large, and they will not be able to hold the line without reinforcements. Ars says they need to fight an open battle. Vargas agrees because if they break the defense, very few people will be left. The Fontana family thinks they are just hard-headed farmers, but in reality, it is a group capable of using magic. If they manage to injure the enemy to the point that he decides to advance, then they have a chance to win. They will only have one chance and need to set up an ambush. Those terms were used in his past life in video games, but now the words seem very heavy for him to use in reality. Valkyrie approaches the boy. She bites him. Apparently, she is trying to revive her friend. Ars says he is counting on her, and they plan to stay side by side until they achieve freedom. The boy is willing to do anything for a single goal. The farmers stand in front of the enemies. As expected from the nobility, they have many metal weapons, and thanks to that, they have quite an advantage according to the boy's plan. The number of troops is in line with what the merchant predicted. The farmers see someone approaching and call attention. It is a man on a hornless Valkyrie. Then the man starts shouting to all the residents of the village of Baruka. He says that Ars has committed a crime. He is going against the orders of the nobility and injured the taxman. As protectors of that land, they cannot be benevolent. There is no reason for the residents of Baruka to carry the burden of sin. From Ars, Hector asks if the boy is just going to listen in silence. The man shouts that as long as everyone surrenders and puts their weapons on the ground, they can return to their villages and live normally. Hector says that the residents of the village will end up yielding if they keep listening to that, and it will turn out very badly. It is time to start the speech before the battle. Ars notices that the battle has already begun. He does not know if he can make a speech that boosts the group's morale and still diminishes the enemy. But he knows a way to calm everyone in that space. The voice is a sound made by the vocal cords. By concentrating his mana on his vocal cords to increase the vibrations, he can produce a loud and clear voice. Ars says that the Fontana family wrote a paper stating that the boy is the owner of the land of Baruka. But after they noticed the development of the city, they decided to take it from the people. They want to steal the land and everything that is in it from them. They even want to steal the residents of Baruka. Ars decides to cover his voice with mana and send strength to the hearts of the citizens who are there. They need to protect their belongings with their own strength, and the resistance of Baruka will not fall before the tyranny of the nobles. They will no longer allow those diabolical actions of the nobility to annihilate whomever they want just because they are angry. They no longer plan to live as puppets, and it is time for battle. It is time for them to reclaim their freedom. The enemies are shocked that the farmers are actually coming towards them. Their captain tells them to maintain formation and keep control. Ars advances at high speed on his Valkyrie. The man begins to leave, and Ars shouts for him not to run away. The boy is in a fury. Then he tells them not to interrupt him. With a single blow, he knocked several men to the ground. Kolgakem is so good at fighting on horseback that he decided to make a handle to use as a weapon. The most important thing is that he used the physical enchantment, and that helps a lot. Despite everything, he probably also became stronger. Ars spins the staff in the air and tells them to get out of his way if they don't want to fly far away. The MC managed to take full advantage of that moment and advance at the right time without giving the enemy a chance to prepare. Moreover, seeing a child fighting against adults must also destabilize them, so he didn't need to face those who were brought there by force. The only person Ars wants to face in that battle is the commander on the hornless Valkyrie, but someone calls Ars asking him to stop. He is going too far alone. Even while on a horse, he is at an exaggerated distance from his army. Thanks to the physical improvement and pebble shots, the soldiers are of much higher quality than the enemies. Even he, being a child, managed to improve his strength. This probably happened because Ars has been absorbing mana from the air since he was little, but the others simply used the mana that was already inside them, so naturally, it must be weaker. Even so, there apparently is a direct relationship between the size and quality of mana power. That is probably why few people can become compatible with him. Ars calls Beto and Vargas. Then he tells his father and Maddock to lead the others. They want to reach the armed army that is concentrated in the middle. Ars, Beto, and Vargas are the pillars of the Baruka army, just as that armed group is probably the pillar of that enemy army. Even so, Ars feels that the attack he knows will not cause any damage to them. Moreover, those soldiers have much more mana than the others. They prepare with their shields in front. Ars notices that they are trying to stop him, so he intends to invade, but as soon as he hits the soldiers' shields, his staff slips from his hand. Ars gets nervous because he is very exposed, so he draws his sword. Some soldiers fell to the ground with an impact, and the others shout for them not to lose to just any child. Ars notices that they didn't fly far, but are much weaker than he thought. Their equipment is excellent, and they have a lot of mana. But the quality of the mana remains the same. This means that Ars's viscous mana is much better. Apparently, the thickness of the mana also has a significant effect on power. So the MC shouts to Vargas that it will be easy if each of them annihilates 10 soldiers, but the young man is desperate. While Beto complains about Ars's decisions, someone pulls out a sword. The enemy general apparently underestimated the boy, so he tries to catch Ars by surprise, but the boy manages to defend himself. The man says that the boy's rebellion ends there. The man says that it has been a while since they last saw each other and asks if Ars has been doing well. Since he was just a little child when they met, Ars probably won't remember. He is the head of the Fontana family that rules that land, Raymond. Ars is outraged that this is the leader of that army. He was the one who ordered the horns of the Valkyries to be cut off, so it is impossible for Ars to forget. Moreover, he was also the one who gave Ars the right to that land. Now this same person is trying to take everything from them, the representative of the Fontana family, Raymond. His name was even in the tax collector's message. Ars questions how he has the courage to take things from those who have nothing. Beto shouts for his brother to calm down and look around. The army is rising again. Apparently Raymond appeared just to distract Ars for a while. The MC notes that he wasted the moment he managed to get for himself. All the enemy soldiers point their hands at them. They are using a spell. Every noble family receives a unique magical power. Even their position of power exists only because of the magic they dominate. But no matter how strong a person is alone, they cannot fight alone. With this, the nobles can give part of their magic to those who will fight in the battle, called the naming ceremony. But magic is a dangerous thing, and it is risky to give it to large populations. In fact, they have already had an experience of betrayal. To simplify, there are conditions for someone to receive magic. The first step is to appear in battle several times, collecting items and listening to the nobility. The second stage is to start working as a knight and receive approval. However, if you are a bad magician or cannot use magic on the battlefield, your last name will be taken from you, and you will be banished from your own family. What Ars did in Baruka was to evade this system. Now he is about to deal with the magical power of the Fontana family. Raymond demands that they launch all attacks, and the knights obey. Several ice spikes fly towards the trio. They are surrounded, and it is impossible to protect against all at once. Vargas is serious. Now it is time to trust that the other will help to deflect the attacks. Using his mana and physical enchantment, Ars must have enough potential to stop those attacks. He also adds mana to his eyes. Now it is as if everything is moving in slow motion. It is difficult to use mana on two different things, but he can manage. The ice launch should work similarly to that of Pebbles. Ars notes that probably the fact that Vargas managed to deflect his attack is because he has already fought against those soldiers. Vargas is hit in the chest. Ars becomes worried. He questions whether the young man is okay. Even though he is tough and has a resilient body and sword, he is not immune to damage. If Vargas succumbs now, he will cause Beto and Ars to be caught. Probably that's why the man is putting his own body on the line. Ars is very happy with Vargas's performance. Meanwhile, Baito is fiercely fighting against the enemies and letting out little screams. Earlier, when Raymond ripped the horns off the Valkyries, Ars couldn't do anything. But now he has the strength. The soldiers are starting to get exhausted. The MC also has loyal companions. He is no longer like he was before, and they will win their own freedom. Finally, the attack stops. Beto says they did a good job. When Beto looks back, he realizes that his Valkyrie has been injured. He dismounts from the creature, furious. Then he charges at the enemies, questioning how they were able to injure his companion. Ars shouts for Vargas to cover Beto. Although the young man is quite strong, he cannot fight alone against an entire army. Beto uses all his fury to attack the enemy. He hits one of the soldiers with his sword, and the man defends himself. Even so, Beto's power is enough to break the soldier's weaponry. Ars is impressed by that. He never noticed his brother's strength since he only compared him to the other children in the village. He knows that those soldiers are weak in mana, but knowing that Beto can face them is very good. His brother is surprising everyone with his crazy power and Vargas covering him. They seem not to need his help. Moreover, thanks to Beto's distraction, there are very few knights in front of them. It is time for Ars to put an end to that. Raymond mocks, saying it is surprising that Ars has magical weapons. He asks how the boy did that, but the MC replies that it is none of his business. But it seems that Raymond still thinks he is coming out on top. The man responds that he will not lose his concentration because of those surprises. He was just lamenting the fact that apparently he can no longer ask Ars to back down. Raymond's mana is much stronger than that of his knights. Ars did not see Raymond as a commander who shows how the knights should do things. Furthermore, his sword seems incredibly dangerous. It certainly has much more mana than the sword that Ars is holding. Raymond says that it's a shame, but now it's time for the boy to leave this world. Valkyrie advances. Ars just needs one strike. He plans to attack Raymond with all the mana he has. Ars manages to land the attack, but he is caught off guard because Raymond's sword turns into an ice sword. The man says he will show the boy the power of the spiritual ice sword. The sword can regenerate with ice, so Ars is at a disadvantage. No matter how many times he breaks Raymond's sword, it will just reform. The man hits Valkyrie. Then Ars is caught unprepared by a violent attack from Raymond. The boy is getting tired and using up his mana, while Raymond just keeps advancing on him. Ars falls to the ground. So apparently very powerful people exist in that world. Raymond advances towards Ars. He has the sword raised over Valkyrie. The MC has no way to escape that. Then he launches an attack towards Raymond. Valkyrie is startled because it is hit on the paw. Raymond's sword falls towards the ground, and he also falls along with Valkyrie. Now both are fighting on equal terms, even though he remains much more composed than Ars. If the MC lets this chance slip away, he doesn't know if he will have another. This is the end of everything. Ars brings down the sword towards Raymond. However, one of his knights manages to stop him. Ars is furious. The knights tell Raymond to get out of there. The MC battles with them, shouting for them to get out of his way. Even so, they are very coordinated. If he really wants to get past those knights, he needs much more power than that. Ars knocks one of them to the ground. As expected, the knights are indeed strong. The MC is panting. Even so, he doesn't lower his sword. He can keep dealing with this by redistributing his mana. After a while, all are defeated, and Ars is exhausted. Everything feels too heavy. Even so, he is not done yet. It's not time to let his guard down because Raymond appears. They begin a sword fight. The man says that Ars is apparently almost out of stamina, so it will be enough to end his useless resistance. Ars says that actually it is Raymond who has to yield at that moment. Suddenly, the ground starts to shake. Raymond is shocked by what is happening. Ars says that he fell into his trap. Tryon tells everyone to listen carefully and says that they just need to follow Hugh. Then everyone advances. This is going to be incredible. Ars knew that a normal surprise attack wouldn't be enough. He didn't have enough personnel for that, but he had his trump card. An unimaginable group of Valkyries begins to advance towards Raymond. The man can hardly believe that this is happening. Ars gives the command for all the Valkyries to act. They then start using the magic from their horns. All at once, they begin to shoot at the enemies. The soldiers can hardly believe that those creatures are magical. The circular horses begin to advance even more, destroying everything. People are terrified because the Valkyries use the same magic as Baruka. Raymond cannot believe that this is true. He then questions if Ars really thinks he will accept being defeated in such a ridiculous way. That was exactly what Ars needed. He makes a quick move, then he strikes his sword at Raymond. He ended that battle. That is the end for Raymond. Anyone can say that was their decisive victory. Ars defeated the representative of the Fontana family and now demands that the soldiers withdraw. The MC shouts that Baruka is now free and he wants to hear the victory cry of his companions. Ars's war partners begin to celebrate. The enemies flee. The true Valkyrie comes to speak with Ars. He says he is fine and thanks her for her concern. After all, Baruka won the battle. Tryon was very scared. He asks if Ars knows what else shocked him. The use of physical enchantment while atop Valkyrie galloping. The only ones capable of galloping on Valkyries are Beto and Ars. The merchant asks what the boy will do now. He knows that this is not the end of the battle with the Fontana family. Now Ars just wants to rest. He knows that Fontana has stronger weaponry than theirs. They collected all the weapons that were left behind on the battlefield. Moreover, about 200 of them switched sides to Baruka or Linda, giving them an advantage in the war. But the main element that made them win was the information. Vargas approaches wanting to talk to Ars. The boy asks if they are ready to talk, and Vargas confirms. They fought side by side since they were ordinary people. Ars managed to capture a few individuals. As a prisoner of war, the information that comes from them could be valuable. Fontana is known for having an armament of over 5,000 soldiers, and they will have no merit if they cannot handle 2 random villages. It's not like they want to fight, but it is necessary to show the strength they possess. They need to appear strong enough so that opponents do not want to risk a fight. And that is why Ars concluded that they need to build a castle there. They are not only excellent for defensive battles, but also symbols of power. That world is weak in science, perhaps because magic exists. Despite this, all castles adhere to a simple design. Since they have a river, they could try to make a moat. Grand gets very excited and says that a moat is a great idea, but their walls are not good enough for a castle. For it to be a castle wall, it is necessary to create a staircase that allows a person to climb to the top and a watchtower for people to observe. Once they build a tower, they will be able to copy the others with memory preservation. After that, it is a good idea to build roads so that they can receive supplies from the villages. They should also create a wall in the village of Linda and leave a Valkyrie in each tower to stay informed. The first step is to organize the people into teams according to their level of magic. Gran is excited because he is going to build a castle. The man wants to make that castle so incredible that even the nobility will be impressed. The renovation is complete, and the tower stands 30 meters tall. Around the wall, there is a moat on the outside. Walls and watchtowers were also built for the village of Linda, in addition to a road that connects the villages. The first step was to work on the things outside the castle first. Beto says that more people want to join them. Thanks to the road, it is possible to travel from the castle to the villages in just one day, so more people joined. Beto also has a message for Ars. Father Paulo wants to see him. Ars returns to Baruca after some time away. He really did not want to see the priest. The man greets the young man and says he sees that the boy is doing all sorts of things. While he was away, Ars questions what the priest is talking about. Then the guy says that the boy is stressing him out. Ars questions whether the priest is referring to the naming ceremony. Paulo confirms. He used magic to name many people without the church's permission, and now he has gone too far and needs to know the truth about the naming magic. The people who can use magic are those who can utilize their own mana. They are called mages and are rare. A story from long ago says that a mage became capable of using his powers just by using words. That type of magic using words became known as a spell. The people who use spells are the sorcerers. Finally, there are those who invented the naming, allowing even ordinary people to use magic. These are called the wizards. The wizard said that the naming was a skill granted to him by the gods. This is the principle of the sacred church to which Paulo belongs. However, the wizard had another objective in mind. He used his power to spread his magic away from the light of the church and invoked everyday magic that cannot be aggressive or put anyone at risk. The naming, in essence, is a parental bond. In other words, it establishes a magical hierarchy. Children become capable of using their parents' spells, while the parents absorb a small portion of the child's mana. Arya wonders if that is why her mana has been growing so much. Paulo says that this is a secret technique that Ars used without permission. Now the boy is smart enough to know how the church stands on this. The MC begins to worry and concludes that his life will end. Then he shouts for Paulo to wait a minute. He says that the ceremony he used was to promote them to knights. This means that he is not just doing it without permission, other people are also involved, and if that is the case, perhaps Paulo will have mercy. Then the priest says that the church always mediates the naming ceremony of the nobles. The nobility can only draw the path of mana with the help of the church. If it weren't for them, no one would be able to stop them from going out and destroying everything. Not only do they gain more powers and soldiers, but the nobles can acquire incredible mana. Power is dangerous unless it is well used. On the other hand, not receiving the money they earn is not something the church wants. Ars is outraged that Paulo is profiting from this. Then Paulo says that they are not taking money, they are just accepting things out of gratitude that God sends. This is how the church manages to maintain peace. This means that Ars is not only going against the church, but also causing it economic harm. Ars reflects on how mana flows from a child to their father. And these fathers have other fathers. Ars asks if Paulo's mana is growing. The man says yes, since he named Ars. Paulo says he thought that was because of the quality of Ars's mana, but cannot explain it alone. The MC named a Valkyrie once, but all those born after that became capable of using his magic. This can only mean that all Valkyries have some connection to him. This means that part of the mana of the Valkyries goes to Father Paulo through him. The boy questions if this is a pyramid scheme. Paulo says that thanks to the increase in his mana, he was promoted to bishop and now governs not just the church, but the entire region. There is a huge distance between bishops and priests, so Paulo is having a much more pleasant life. Ars questions who gave him that promotion, and the man says no one. He suddenly just learned a new spell and knew he had been promoted. He can now use healing magic. Ars observes that this is similar to the people he named who cannot use certain spells. People cannot use those spells because they do not know they exist, but those with enough mana suddenly know the spell. It must be the feeling that God himself gave that great power. Paulo says that now he will reach the point he wanted. Then he questions why the boy did not leave his future with him. They need to observe Ars's current situation. He led farmers to rebellion, attacked the neighboring village, killed the representative of the Fontana family, captured 6 knights, and is illegally occupying land. Ars says that Paulo is doing only bad things. The bishop adds that he also stole the church's secret from the naming ceremony and has spread aggressive magic. Ars has just cause for war against the Fontana family, but he has no excuse for the naming ceremony. The boy questions if he cannot resolve this by joining the church, but Paulo says he is already out since he used magic aggressively. The MC asks if the priest is saying he is out of options, and Paulo says that the boy's biggest problem at that moment is the dispute with the church. Now Paulo needs to know what he will say to them next. He is willing to say that he was responsible for naming the village of Baruca. This way, Ars would not have gone over him to do this, and they could continue with their work. The MC questions why the priest would do that, and Paulo says he will explain what that represents. He rose in rank thanks to the mana that Ars has, and there is a great chance he will be in trouble if the boy dies. Moreover, Ars used the naming ceremony to increase his own strength, and he would very much like that to continue under the radar. So Paulo is willing to help Ars as much as he can. including some inaccuracies when reporting the things that happen to the church. Even so, they cannot pretend that nothing is happening. The actions Ars has taken are already known, and the boy will need to deal with this soon. But in this situation, who will have to give them their money? The boy observes that he cannot be helped. Tips are requested from the nobility when making the naming. If he had only asked Bishop Paulo to name the village, the story would not make sense since he would not receive any reward. So Ars questions how much he must pay. Then Paulo calculates on paper and shows Ars. The boy is shocked by how much money it is because he spent his life saving that. The man questions if this means the boy is able to pay. For most people, that is an impossible amount of money. Even so, Ars is not willing to spend his entire fortune just to resolve a dispute with the church. He cannot trust everyone. So does he need Paulo to make some agreement with the Fontana family? The man agrees that they still need to deal with the family. Paulo tells Ars to imagine himself as a member of the Fontana family and try to conclude what their priority is at that moment. The boy questions whether it would be him, and Paulo says that apparently the boy hasn't understood anything yet. They want to know where Baraka and his army got that power, since few people can use magic so naturally. Even fewer are capable of transferring that power to others. They will probably think that another noble family started that rebellion by giving money and power to the farmers. Paulo will say that this noble doesn't exist, and that it is the citizens themselves who decided to do that. He also plans to tell that the appointment of the Baruka farmers was made by him. Ars questions whether that won't be dangerous for him and what he will do. Paulo says that performing Ars's baptism is already enough. Besides that, after his promotion, he is the bishop responsible for all the churches in that territory of Fontana, so he will probably be able to manage things with the Fontana family. Of course, he will need to do some grassroots work, and something like that would be difficult without Ars's donation. The boy reflects that money is what makes the world go round and says that Baruka's fate is in the priest's hands. Meanwhile, in the city, people are discussing Paulo being the new bishop. Moreover, he is the one responsible for the Baruka church and appointed Ars. The boy says he never imagined a bishop would cover for him. This shows how important Ars is. Even the church wants to take risks for him. While Ars is organizing the troop, he is called. It is the bishop approaching in a cart, worried because he did everything he should with the Fontana family. As expected, the agreement needs to be sealed by both parties directly, so they need to go to the palace they planned. That will be an informal discussion on neutral ground for both parties. For this purpose, Ars chose one of his towers that was built in the middle of the road and has no one around. The boy climbed the entire staircase and opens the door. The other says he must be Ars. He is somehow impressed that it is just a child. The MC is indignant with the guy's mockery and asks who he is. Standing up, he says he is Carlos Fontana. Currently, he is the one who commands the Fontana family. Ars is indignant that Paulo didn't tell him this, and Carlos Fontana says the bishop has already told him everything. His proposal is that they ignore that little revolt and cease the fighting, but Ars doesn't want to agree so easily. He says he has his own demands. Carlos Fontana smiles. Not only does he not kneel before a noble, but he also demands things. Extending a paper to Ars, Carlos Fontana says that is exactly how the head of a rebellion should be and offers those terms. Ars takes the contract to take a look. Carlos Fontana says he doesn't mind leaving the land of Baruka with Ars if he stops that fight. There it states that Ars has to serve the Fontana family, but in return, he receives the status of knight, which are quite favorable conditions. The boy questions whether Carlos Fontana plans to keep that promise. The man says there are some details to be worked out, but that is official. If he did something so horrendous, his subordinates would abandon him. Ars questions whether Carlos Fontana knows that he was the one who killed his representative and whether he doesn't find it strange that he wants him as his subordinate. Then Carlos Fontana says that actually the way things work, he is very grateful. He starts laughing and says that Ars did a splendid job killing Raymond. Probably Ars knows what he is talking about. He was still a child, but the experience of war is something hard to forget. It was 3 years ago. His father, the former head of the family, died, and he inherited his position. Considering inheriting the throne, people do not hold back, and most were fine with killing the chief. Carlos Fontana was just a child and was appointed lord when a man from the Barbaros family, who served as a knight, was elected to govern until Carlos Fontana was old enough. He acknowledges that Raymond did a good job protecting him until he came of age, but while he was in office, he witnessed the death of an excellent soldier from the family. The position of representative is originally given to knights from families, but he took that for himself. Raymond was responsible for the Valkyrie's gift that Ars delivered. It also means that he was the one who organized the Fontana family's contracts. Carlos Fontana agrees and says that that small slip was the opportunity to destroy him. The MC notes that Raymond was also responsible for the mistake of giving the land to the boy. Carlos Fontana comments that he did not expect Ars to kill Raymond. This means that he is now in control of the Fontana family. Even so, the boy says that it is not so simple, and he is working hard to consolidate different powers in Fontana after the end of Raymond. Carlos Fontana points to Ars. He then says that Raymond's family and his subordinates are living a peaceful life, but despite being obedient, they will likely rebel sooner or later. On that occasion, Ars will be responsible for putting an end to that. Carlos Fontana may be the lord of his family, but he does not have much support for himself. However, he can stop him if he has the power of the Baruca family. Ars faced Carlos Fontana as an equal and without any fear. To him, the boy does not have the mindset of a farmer. Ars seems to have something that he would like to protect. This means that the boy will probably not back down no matter what happens. What remains for Carlos Fontana is to offer something of value to the boy: the lives of the Baruca people and the health that the boy has managed to build. In addition, he will have his freedom. Carlos Fontana is determined to ensure this. In exchange, Ars must be his sword. His position is not solid, but he remains a lord, and Ars is grateful that Carlos Fontana does not change him. He is interested in accepting that to maintain a good relationship with Paulo. Then the boy says that he has some conditions to add. Their meeting lasted until night. The next day, the priest places a paper on the table. That is the peace they negotiated, and now Paulo wants to know if both agree. Carlos Fontana and Ars say yes. Paulo asks Ars to step forward. He asks if the boy promises to serve and support Carlos Fontana. The MC says yes. Next, the priest asks Carlos Fontana to step forward. He asks if the young man promises to make Ars his knight to help each other fight against enemies. He says yes. On that occasion, Ars kneels before Carlos Fontana for his appointment. The priest uses his power at that moment, and Carlos Fontana tells Ars Baruca that he is now appointed as his knight. The boy becomes known as Ars von Baruca. After making a mana contract with him, Carlos Fontana is much stronger to dominate his territory. This should help when pressuring Raimu's faction. In addition, Ars gained some new powers, such as ice casting. Now he can use the magical power of the Fontana family. Now that everything is resolved, Ars can finally resume his mundane life. Gran asks if the boy does not feel like doing something with his own land. The boy not only managed Baruca and Linda, but also the entire castle north of the river. Carlos Fontana originally only wanted to deal with Baruca, but after a long moment of arguing about not being able to leave Vargas or the castle behind, Carlos Fontana conceded. Ars tells Gran that there is something he would like the guy to do, and it is the most important thing at that moment. Then he says he needs to gather money because he has nothing to fulfill the guy's fantasies. He has every right to govern and create taxes and judgments, but this comes with obligations. By acquiring taxes, he needs to pay the Fontana family. Furthermore, if they ask for that, the boy needs to give it up. But at that moment, Ars does not have money even to pay for his citizens' food. Ars cannot fail to show his loyalty to the territory he worked so hard to conquer. He needs to think of a way to make money quickly. So he organizes an internal administration. A girl closes a book. She has a sad look. The maid asks what is happening with Lilina. The girl smiles and says it is nothing. Then she asks the maid to get the next book she will read. Raymond, who consolidated and protected his territory since she was young, died in a rebellion. He was always very talented, and she believes that Carlos Fontana will be able to manage his territory well. Even so, Raymond's powerful knights will find the culprit and do not feel comfortable with Carlos Fontana's inexperience. Despite being smart, he must know how to do politics. The girl reflects that she also needs to organize herself for what is to come. Ars says he will announce those responsible for the Baruca kingdom. The merchant Tryon Baruca will help them with internal duties since he can read, write, and do math. Beto and Vargas will serve as captains. They need money to establish an army, so the initial focus is to train the people who are already there. Ars's father will be responsible for security. He will establish a simple policy so that people can maintain peace. This way, Ars can ask his father to keep control over those using magic in times of peace. Matic and the leaders of the two villages that joined will be his judges. There is no well-established law there, but people will likely listen to them. The MC wants those three to make judgments in his name. Meanwhile, Gran must continue being a builder, but since he is not very good at organization, Ars needs to think of someone to keep an eye on him. In the meantime, Ars plans to hire people to entertain the rest of the population. When they built the roads and the castle, those people did not just follow his orders, but also provided better suggestions than his initial idea. This means that even if they cannot read, they are still intelligent. The boy wants to make them work like never before for the kingdom of Baruca. And that is how the administration of the territory of Baruca began. The merchant complains, saying that Ars is a monster. The first thing the boy did was take all his precious money. Since he ran out of money after paying the church, he asked Tryon to make an investment. Bishop Paulo was surprised that he had saved so much money, which means that if the two do business, they will make others run like bandits. Ars tells Tryon to think of that money as payment for the good land he received. The man agrees to reflect that it is a good donation for his leader. He observes that the boy has good skills, but wants to know if he will really be okay, since he went from being an ordinary person to nobility out of nowhere. Ars established a mutual relationship with Carlos Fontana, but his subordinates and the other nobles do not like him. The boy could easily be mobilized and sacrificed in the middle of the battlefield. Many told Carlos Fontana that he should take back the territory. Just making his land perform well will not work. He needs to make the kingdom of Baruca the strongest in the area. For that, the first step is to make transactions to gather the money he needs. The boy tells them to open the market. Tryon complains, saying that no one in their right mind would travel that far just to buy a few things. The nobles are constantly doing business with their neighbors, so going elsewhere is quite difficult. Every territory has its toll where it is necessary to pay a fee to pass. Additionally, there is also the difficulty of dealing with the guilds. These guilds charge excessive fees for everything, from what you sell to where you sell it. And if you decide to conduct your business without the guild, you can be arrested. Ars asks if this does not hinder the movement of money and the market. He then suggests that they create a free market where people can enter and negotiate. The merchant says that things are still difficult since they will have to pay fees in all the territories they leave and enter to get there. Even so, Ars wants to create a city and a system where merchants can trade on their own terms. The first step is to make a simple passage from there to the city of Fontana. He already has a kind of bridge but can improve it and make a road. Building a bridge was already part of the agreement, so they will end up killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Beto questions whether the peace agreement mentioned building that road for merchants, and the boy says that actually the initial intention was for the armies. This way, if they feel any kind of threat, they will be able to reach Baruka. The boy says that another term is to keep the soldiers stationed on the other side of the river. Negotiating that castle north of the river was the hardest thing to do with Carlos Fontana. In the end, he ended up accepting. Even so, it is not as if he wanted to be on Carlos Fontana's bad side. He wants to make that castle north of the river into a city that connects Fontana and Baruka. Ars ordered that people who owned farms use magic to improve what they had. Meanwhile, the others worked on building roads. Just a few days later, the road would be responsible for reducing travel time between Baruka and Fontana. Ars thanks everyone when they finish and says they did a good job. Now there are no more roads to build. The population begins to wonder how they will make money. They do not have farms and do not know where to start. Ars observes that it is part of a lord's job to ensure that his population has food. A population with means of survival reduces crime. It is also part of a lord's duty to maintain peace. Ars builds a housing complex in the village of Baruka. People are impressed. The boy says that anyone who wants can live there. Ars cleared a bit of land after the wall and made various little houses. The boy says he has even prepared work for them so they can make money on their own. The work consists of just 2 things. The first is the construction of super hard bricks. The production of those super hard bricks will be something that will be Baruka's specialty. The second thing is the growth of magical mushrooms. The most important part of this is to obtain a source of mana. If they do that the right way, they can have a considerable harvest and enjoy the mushrooms for a long time. Everyone is impressed with what Ars can do. Initially, Ars wanted to keep the secret of the magical mushroom just for himself. His profits will decrease, but that should be better in the long run. It is important to maximize their chances of surviving the war. If he stocks enough mana, he can use magic without worrying about it. That's how Baruka received its specialties. Now Ars needs to make a deal with the farmers. The first step is to inspect the land. Beto is confused, and the boy explains that it boils down to investigating the size of the land and how many harvests can be made. Beto says he doesn't want to do that because he prefers to train his little soldiers. Ars agrees that it's not his style. Thanks to the leveling of the land and its improvement, the probability of a much larger harvest is huge this year, which means he will be able to collect a large amount in taxes. The idea of the survey is to discover how much each piece of land produces, and that will indirectly let him know the volume of the taxes. Even so, if he raises taxes right in the first year, he will be seen as a bad governor. Ars wonders how he can measure the area of that land since those people have no form of measurement. So the boy decides to measure it by considering how many times the land leveling power has been used. Both the leveling power and the soil improvement can only be used in squares of 10 meters on each side. This way, anyone can perform an analysis even without instruments for it. Ars says he will do this and consider that 1 acre of Baruka's land will correspond to 1 leveling of soil. Earlier, when they were fighting against Raymond, Carl stood up crying and shouting that it was all his fault. He said that both the Valkyrie's injury and the boys were his fault. Even so, he and his mother made a point of reminding him that it wasn't like that. Since then, the little boy has been trying to prove himself useful. Ars says they also need to decide on a unit of length. The MC says they will define the meter as the side of the land leveling, and if the meter is divided into 100, each piece will be called a centimeter. Now that they have decided on the length, it has become easier to measure volume and height. A liter of water weighs a kilogram, and they can establish that water evaporates at 100 degrees Celsius. Ars doesn't expect everyone to understand that right away, so he prepared material for them and asked Carl to distribute it to everyone. Ars asks if Carl understood everything he said. Then he says he is counting on the little boy. That's how the Baruka community began to use a measurement system that Ars was used to. They started analyzing the land based on what Ars taught, but he had no paper. They need paper to record everything they are discovering. Despite this, paper is something very expensive, and Ars cannot afford the luxury of spending money right now. He remembers that there are many trees in the forest and that paper comes from them, so he tried to make paper with magic. Even so, he had several failures. Tryon observes that he had told Ars that it was impossible to make paper directly from a plant. Even so, the MC is not willing to give up after a few failures. He will try boiling at high temperatures and mixing other ingredients to test another pulp. The materials he is using for this paper are wood from the forest, recovery mana, and roots. The first step is to mash the wood, breaking it down. Then it's just a matter of boiling. He discovered that boiling it in mana potion extracts the fibers in a better way. After that, it's just a matter of mixing the fibers with the pulp and boiling again. Ars will use the yams that grow in the forest to make the pulp. The next step is to extract the mixture and place it between pieces of cloth with a weight on top. The idea is for the fabrics to absorb all the water and the pressure to help drain the paper. After that, he theoretically has a splendid piece of paper. Ars can even write well on that sheet. Now it is possible to make records about that land. Tryon is shocked and says he wants to buy those papers from the boy. The MC mocks, asking if it wasn't him who was saying that it was simply impossible. Tryon apologizes and says he never imagined the boy could do something so incredible. Ars asks if he plans to use or sell that, and the man says both, and a thin and interesting sheet is perfect for being used in records and for selling. Even though it is very thin, that paper is perfect for writing, unlike the others he has seen. The merchant says he is sure that it will sell anywhere. Ars says that if the man wants to go that far, they should increase paper production and specialize a group for it. It is bothersome that the only thing he can do for the families who lost someone in battle is financial compensation. They don't even look him in the eyes. Making paper will be more suitable than windows and farms. And that's how the mass production of paper began, with a workshop for the people. Ars preferred to hire the widows for the team of specialists. The paper contains mana in its composition, which is not cheap, but it is selling very well in the cities. Even so, the widows continue not to look them in the eyes. But now the family is grateful. A little boy who lost his father looks at Ars and signs to him. The MC managed to lessen the burden that those families are carrying after losing their providers. Ars says that the next step is equipment for Valkyries. Gran gets very excited about that idea and is eager to make new equipment. Although the armors are cool, Ars thought about producing saddles and stirrups. He asked Gran to draw a diagram for him. The man questions if Ars can't ride without those equipment, and the boy says yes. Even so, he noticed how important it is to have a saddle when he fought against Raymond on horseback. He lost that battle and was thrown off the Valkyrie. If he had a saddle with stirrups, he would have better support for his feet. Thus, using body strengthening, he could have won that battle. Saddles are easy to make, so people like him and Beto should be able to do that. Gran asks if Ars wants to create a cavalry. Speed is a great power in battle. A cavalry will likely improve their military performance. Those Valkyries with horns can assist even without anyone on top. Meanwhile, those without horns should help in battle by serving as horses. The boy says he wants something that makes it easier for the Valkyries to cross to the other city, and Gran says he will do that. The horseshoes or horseshoes have been produced. There is a significant difference in the speed of the Valkyries when they are walking in the forest and when they are walking on the road, since in the latter case they carry people and loads. That is why they need shoes to withstand the burden they carry. Ars likes how the horseshoe looks. Valkyrie is excited too. As time passed, Ars noticed some things about those animals. There is a difference between the Valkyries generated by him and the eggs that were hatched by other Valkyries. Although one is larger than the other, their horn and magical power are the same. This shows that by making just one model of horseshoe, all of them can be shod. Ars tried all kinds of horseshoes until Valkyrie was happy. Finally, after several attempts, they found the perfect equipment for that creature. Ars reflects that there is still much to do and is already exhausted. In Ars's previous life, there was a huge variety of things to plant and consume throughout the year, while in that world, it is only possible to eat during harvest time. Ars observes that even if they use soil improvement, it won't help. Despite Baruka having a warehouse, they do nothing with the roots, and they end up spoiling. But that will end that day. With that new warehouse, they will be able to store food for a long time. Beto says that cube looks more like a giant tofu. Ars is indignant and says that it is a special building constructed with walls almost 3 times thicker. Neither light nor air enters there. Ars begins to use magic. He casts ice balls in all directions and Beto questions if everything is okay. Gran asks if the boy doesn't need to rest a bit. Ars says that a lot of ice is needed for that, and those two should help him fill the space. Then they manage to line the warehouse with ice. The next step is to cover the ice with sawdust so that it doesn't melt easily. At that moment, they have a complete freezer. Beto complains, saying that it is very cold there. The boy knew that before electricity, people used boxes with ice as freezers. Maybe doing that for families isn't a bad idea. And for those who don't have enough power to make ice, they can buy the material. They can store not only vegetables, but also leftover meats. This will definitely improve the current situation. Gran asks Beto why they don't build a castle there, and the boy gets confused. The man says that Ars spends most of his days in Baruka and not in the castle north of the river. The boy says he is having fun working this way. The only one in that castle is Carlos Fontana with the smallest number of soldiers specified in the peace treaty. Gran questions why they don't build another castle there. Castles are an important way to show power. The boy agrees but thinks Gran is just trying to get the chance to build something else. Ars observes that they just got out of a tough situation, and building a castle could generate more intrigues, but Gran sees it as a transition to governor. Everyone saw Ars's strength in the last battle, but on the other hand, those who were not present have no idea. This will make some people see problems in paying taxes to a child. Ars observes that Gran is suggesting he do a demonstration of power. The man agrees and says that castle will be much more decorated than the other. Since this is not urgent, Ars plans to work step by step. The most impressive thing in Baruka is the castle north of the river, but as Gran said, the boy is never there. Having a large castle there will be a great thing to help people find out who governs Baruka. Ars is still determined to open the open market, but he is not sure if the merchants will go there. Since he can be called to battle at any moment, he shouldn't just focus on governing a land. His goal should be to increase his strength. To do this, he needs people to move to the kingdom. Ars tells Gran that just building a castle won't be enough. He wants to make the heart of the city of Baruka, with a castle in the center. So let's make a city around the castle. The boy noticed that the land being surrounded by walls probably kept other people away. If he built the city without walls in a place where people wanted to live, more individuals would likely appear. If more people move there, merchants will also appear, and soon this city will become perfect for business. To protect their treasures and homes, people won't have problems fighting by his side. Now that he is the Lord, calling people to live there only brings him advantages. The village of Baruka and Linda, along with the castle to the north, make up the Baruka kingdom. The first step is to improve the lands that are between the central wall and the outer wall. To the south, where Beto and Gran live and where Tryon has his shop, will be the free market where people will be allowed to open their shops. The freezer is also located there. Even so, there is still a lot of empty space left. So Ars will divide what is left of the land in the south and west to sell the lots to anyone who wants to live there. Now they just need doors and windows, and they will be ready. Unlike the area to the south, the northern part is next to the forest where it is possible to collect wood, so lumberjacks and people who work with charcoal will want to stay there. Since the production of paper and magical mushrooms also needs trees, these people should also stay there. The lands to the north are divided into plots for planting food for the Valkyries. The boy plans to eventually give this area to every soldier he has. He is not ready to have an army yet, but leaving the gate ready for the people to use will only make it easier for them to march when the time comes. For now, his duty is to maintain peace, and the boy reflects that it might be a good idea to create a prison to detain those who are necessary. It would also be important to create a kind of court for people to assess crimes. Eris wonders if he should judge the heavier crimes in the castle itself and leave the lighter ones for the population. He decides to build these super-resistant brick constructions between the two walls. In this way, Eris continued to develop the land, focusing on the construction of the city to the south. The merchant is impressed with what he sees and says that it is incredible, and he has never encountered a city like that. Tryon asks if Eris gave his all to make that happen, and he said yes. The boy questions whether that city has grown larger than Fontana. The entire city is divided into lodges and is very well organized with standard houses. The divider that was made between the road separating the south and east sides was very well planned. Moreover, the buildings have arches and even glass windows. Additionally, the boy made everything with super-resistant bricks, which is a high-class material. Eris reflects that he only used memory preservation in his own house to make that. Eris asks Tryon if he thinks that will surprise people from other cities, and the man says anyone would be surprised by that. Then the man asks Eris for help getting down from up there because he is scared. The boy needs to improve the outer wall. It is perfectly capable of withstanding giant wild boars, but needs to be defensive against human attacks as well. The boy would love to make it entirely out of super-resistant bricks, but he can't turn that into a single spell, which makes the work inefficient. In the castle to the north, 4 towers were enough, but considering the size of that wall, just that amount won't work. So Eris places a tower every 200 meters. To build those towers, Eris used the memory preservation from the castle to the north. He plans to leave the defense at the top of the wall under the responsibility of Beto and Vargas, as he did in the other castle. Eris asked Gran to improve their defense, and the man did an excellent job. Now, if there is a battle in front of the wall, they can throw super-resistant bricks at the enemies since mana is hard to store. It is easy to cause damage by throwing bricks from up there. Soon Eris is determined to acquire some weapons so they can make a quality defense, but for now, the bricks should suffice. The boy takes another potion to recover his mana, reflecting on what he will do next. They should also make a moat around the wall that is 10 meters deep. They can't fill that with water like in the castle to the north, so instead, Eris made it wider. They will have 4 points on the wall with gates that are drawbridges. Since the lumberjacks are very skilled, that will be ready quickly. Madak observes that limiting access to the city is great for defense. If necessary, they can just raise the door and protect the kingdom. Meanwhile, there are also plenty of people to shoot at the enemies. That is the birth of the fortress city Barucania. Tryon tells Eris that they don't have enough glass and questions whether they can make more. The boy is outraged and questions whether even his glass reserve has been depleted. The man observes that all the buildings there require glass. Moreover, the merchants have been buying the glass instead of the hard bricks. The boy notes that he wasn't interested in buying before and questions what changed. Tryon responds that it is because he made that city. Now that they see the glass being used in real constructions, they have reassessed its utility. So the houses in his city have become a model. Eris says he should have sold well when he tried before. Tryon says the boy just needs to stock up again soon because the glass business is going to take off. Since that is the opinion of a merchant, the boy concludes that he needs to start mass production. In that case, he should probably turn ice production into a spell. Gran meets Eris exhausted. He says he is a builder and doesn't like mass production with magic. The boy argues that the resistant bricks are convenient. Gran says bricks and glass are not the same thing. Making those bricks with magic makes sense since those are the materials used, and all kinds of things can be made with those bricks. However, with glass, it is different. Besides windows, Eris also uses glass to create cups, plates, and all kinds of things. But if he turns that into a spell, he will probably only be able to make one thing. That will stifle creativity and new inventions. The boy reflects that sand and coal are the base materials for glass and can be obtained easily. So it would be sad if they stopped producing new things. Eris asks Gran to try to make something new with the glass, and the man questions whether he has anything in mind. Mac asks him to make lenses. He says he wants to see if Gran can meet his expectations, and the man gets quite excited. Despite it being a random request, Gran is having fun. Eris manages to find a moment to rest while drinking tea. It has been a long time since he enjoyed a cup of tea in peace. Hector asks if the inner castle walls will come later, and the boy replies that yes. That should be a symbol of power and those things, but Eris hasn't thought yet about what he will do. Then he hears two men arguing outside. Eris recognizes the voices and goes over there. Bido and Vargas are discussing. Then Bido explains that they are talking about how to act if they go to war again, and Vargas only knows how to talk about defense. Vargas asks Eris to tell Beto that it doesn't make sense to charge those who are not prepared. The boy notices that they are discussing battle plans. Since that is an important debate, the boy decides that they need to calm down and have a civilized conversation. Eris apologizes to Hector for bothering him, but the young man doesn't seem to be worried. Beto is drinking tea at the table. Then he says that it is not possible to win a battle unless you attack, but Vargas thinks that since they have the power to build castles, they should focus on defense. Eris understands why Beto is so obsessed with attacking. The battle against the Fontana family was the first. It was a sinister atmosphere hanging over a battlefield where people were dying. Even the MC felt terrified. That's why he ended up attacking without taking the necessary precautions. Apparently the same happened with Beto. They defeated a large number of trained enemies, and probably Beto thinks that this was because they took the initiative and kept fighting even after everything. There is no doubt that it was a great move for them. But despite Beto being strong, he is still a child without experience, and Eris does not see their victory as a success. After all, they did nothing but challenge the opponent. He does not plan to do that again, knowing he is at a disadvantage. On the other hand, Vargas's defense focused on protection is strange. He is saying that they need to focus their training and use the castles to defend against battles, but Eris thinks that fighting this way is very risky. After all, he is just a person without battle experience. Even if they build forts and defensive walls, no reinforcements will come to help them. Not only is Carlos Fontana's position unstable, but he can also abandon Eris at any moment. They are not specialized in any type of firearm. The other knights hate them and can attack them at any moment, so there is no choice but to survive using their own power. Everyone there needs to be flexible on the battlefield to do the best job possible and keep the population alive. Everyone there must have the same power and knowledge as the squad captain. Beto and Vargas are confused because Eris did not answer their question. That is not even realistic and may be a difficult decision, but they need to make a choice. Now Eris can see what the Baruka army needs. The problem is how they will obtain that. He wants to do everything for the development of the city's economy, but he cannot ignore the evolution of the army. Hector asks if Eris wants to conquer territories and increase his power, but the boy says no. The MC says he just wants to fight for his land and his status there. Eris's memories of his past life left him with traumas. He is afraid of fighting and does not want anyone to die, just peace. The boy says he just wants a peaceful life on the farm and eating good food. Hector is happy with this answer. Even so, the MC thinks it is not possible to be a pacifist in that world. So the boy starts the training. He tells everyone to shoot while mounted on Valkyries. The training to become a survival force on the battlefield has begun. The first step is to practice riding the Valkyries, which became easier thanks to the saddle and harness. People need to use their enhanced physique to stay on the horses and then feel terrible muscle pain, but nothing that won't pass after some meditation. Those who learn to ride move on to the next stage. This involves using magic while on horseback. After all, it is very difficult to use weapons mounted on a horse and requires a lot of practice. First, they use pebble shots until they evolve, and then they master ice throwing. The great advantage is that they have a large number of Valkyries. That's why Ars chose this fighting style. He is training magical soldiers who can ride and simultaneously shoot at the target. This allows people to keep their distance from the opponent while attacking them. They manage to hunt a giant boar using this strategy. Ars observes that the concentrated barrage of ice throwing should work even on the most resilient boar. The practice against that animal went very well. The Valkyrie from Ars is leading the entire fleet by herself, so even if the soldiers aren't very good at riding, they will maintain formation. It's like a school of fish. With a good leader, it's as if you are a single unit. That was how he took the first step to form Baruka's magical cavalry. Gran is excited that he finally succeeded. He did something with the glass lenses. The boy asks if he has finished and if he hasn't slept again. Gran says he knows how to use meditation, so he's completely fine. Meditation is a magic that only works if you are sleeping, so it probably didn't help at all. but who knows if it has a gentle effect even with a person awake. Ars tells them to test it at the top of the tower, a pair of binoculars capable of observing objects at long distances using light refraction and multiple lenses. Ars only has a vague idea of how this works, so he can't replicate it with magic. Even so, it's possible to observe everything from up there. Ars even sees his mother hanging laundry. The boy says that Gran did very well. Then the man says he never does anything half-heartedly. The MC is happy that Gran went to Baruka again. Someone tells Ars that it's snowing. It's Carl, who is very cheerful. The boy says it makes sense, and it's probably going to be cold that day, so they should drink something warm. Ars no longer believed it was possible to spend some time resting. The year ended without Carl asking for anything unreasonable from him. They were summoned several times, but the Baruka army was never sent directly into battle since there is a huge and splendid road. Moreover, a gigantic fortification much larger than the enemy base. They can create fantastic roads that lead directly to the rebels' bases. Additionally, they can also raise forts 10 meters high at strategically important points. After seeing the number of troops they had and the fortress growing day by day, most of the enemies surrendered. Of course, there were exceptions, but Carlos Fontana was the person who dealt with those troops. Thanks to the roads they built, every time they are summoned, Fontana's structure grows excellently. Ars even asked Carlos Fontana to revoke the tolls, because if they did that, people would circulate more freely, and it could bring profit. Carlos Fontana looked at Ars as if he were indignant that the boy's requests never ended. As a result, the city in Fontana is doing much better than before. With winter, both the flow of goods and the summons stagnate. There is a lot of snow in the region, so they spend time as if they were hibernating. Ars complains that it is very cold. He complains, saying he would like to warm up in a hot bath. The younger brother says that it will apparently warm up Ars, but it's a strange wish. The MC observes that he got so busy organizing the city that he forgot how good it is to take a nice bath, but managing the entire territory is exhausting. The Valkyrie knocks on the window calling for the boy. Ars goes out and asks what it is. He wants to know what the Valkyrie wants. Then she takes him to what seems to be a hot spring. Valkyrie found that when they were returning from the war with Fontana. And now she brought him there because she heard the boy complaining about the cold. His Valkyrie is really very smart. The boy puts his feet in the water because if he jumps in fully, he will end up freezing when he comes out. Then he is surprised because if there is a hot spring there, people will probably show up. Ars grabs the Valkyrie and runs to the city. He tells Vargas that he would like to use a piece of the open land from the neighboring village. The man questions why he is in such a hurry and says he can use it, but would like to understand what Ars plans to do. He wants to divert the hot water from the river to Linda's village. He believes that it is possible to attract several guests if they build an inn where people can take a hot bath. Vargas says he will pass that on to the village. Depending on where you organize this, the water can be almost bubbling. That's why he will make everything divert directly from the spring. Using his magic, Ars searches the ground. First, he will build a sturdy pipe to connect to the water source, having a filter at the end. Then he will place another sloped pipe that will carry the water to the village while maintaining its temperature. Finally, he just needs to complete the structure of the spring in the village, and everything will be fine. At least that's what Ars imagined, but all he managed to create was a weird pool. It was a mistake to let farmers with no knowledge do that. Now there's only the lodging to build next to that pool. They can't control the temperature, but the water is coming in perfectly. For hygiene reasons, Ars installed a connection between that pool and the pit, filling it with dirty water and exchanging the hot water. Ars's brother asks if, since he wanted a bath, it wouldn't have been faster to boil a bucket of water. He doesn't understand why there's so much work to bring hot water to the city. Ars says that those hot springs usually bring a vitality that just hot water can't provide. The child asks if meditation doesn't already solve that problem, and Ars is bothered that he uses valid arguments. Now it seems like he's just a strange guy making several people work just because he wants to take a bath, but the MC wants his brother to think he's cool. As he lies down to sleep, Ars can't get this out of his head, unable to find any benefit in the hot water. He just wanted to make his little brother think he was impressive. Ars builds a gigantic space. Vargas asks if that is made of glass and sturdy bricks and what Ars is planning to do. The boy says something amazing and that he has been planning it for a long time, even though he thought of it last night. What Ars built is a kind of greenhouse. He was thinking about how to make planting work even in winter, and even tried to make a smaller one before, but ended up failing because the glass doesn't keep out the cold. It was fine during the day when the sun was shining, but at night the temperature inside was the same as outside. Even so, that has now changed. Ars plans to keep the temperature inside the greenhouse warm using water. Vargas is impressed, and Ars asks him to tell the villagers that they can try to grow something there. If that works, the food problem during winter will be solved. That's how Ars ended up building a hot spring inn and a greenhouse in the village of Linda, both unknown things in that world. Ars thanks Valkyrie, saying that thanks to her, they can now do more things during winter. The boy is very happy that she came out of the egg he hatched. His Valkyrie is truly amazing. Those creatures can run even with adult men on their backs. Moreover, they master the magic he can use and have much more mana than common farmers. Now they even discovered a hot spring. The list of qualities of the Valkyries just keeps growing. They are also resistant to temperature changes. Valkyries can enter the hot spring without problems and also run in a freezing winter with ease. Basically, they are animals that can live anywhere. Ars hugs the Valkyrie, and the merchant asks what the kid is doing. It's almost time for them to leave. Ars observes that this is a great opportunity since movement is usually restricted during winter. Doing what people don't do is the main rule of commerce. That's why they collected what they managed to grow in the greenhouse. They will transport it to the city of Fontana and sell it. Although those things taste horrible and usually don't sell well, now everything is different. People want to buy as much as they can. It's not common to be able to eat fresh vegetables in winter. During winters, the world is really harsh. People can easily starve, and sometimes they even take measures to reduce the number of mouths to feed. It's quite common for the eldest son to be forced to leave home only to die in the street. Only rich people don't have to worry about food in winter. The crowd continues wanting more products even after they have run out. Trying to calm the population, Ars says that they will return the next day. The men and women question whether he will still have that fresh food. Ars tells them not to worry because in Baruka they have plenty of food. The sale of Hatsuka in winter is incredible. Ars is happy because he feels like Santa Claus with his reindeer and found a way to make much more money with Hatsuka than he ever imagined. City of Fontana, City of Carlos Fontana. Ars' first project as Lord of Barricania. It was to fulfill the customs of the new year in that land. All knights must find the lord who assigned them at the beginning of the year, and that's why Ars went to the castle of Fontana. There in the lord's hall, everyone knelt before him. Since Ars is a novice, he had to wait and was the last to see Carlos Fontana. Then the party begins with dinner. People were gossiping, trying to understand how Raymond lost to Ars, considering the boy is just a child. They are outraged that Ars is succeeding in his land and question why the Lord allowed that child to have a place. Becoming a knight shouldn't depend on your family background, but in reality, most knights come from knightly families. The people at that party are the bourgeoisie, various privileged individuals, and not common farmers. Ars stood there alone. He is the only one who was appointed by Carlos Fontana himself, and yet no one wants to stand by his side. People are outraged, saying that Ars can set up camps with great ease in the blink of an eye and probably has the help of other nobility. Despite saying those absurdities, no one has the courage to confront Ars due to his achievements. The boy starts to get bored and then puts the mana in his eye to see the aura of the people. This makes it very easy to tell the difference. The boy notices that those who seem to have faced battles have a better quality mana, even if it's not much. They probably refine their mana as they fight. On the other hand, those who partnered with Ryman previously have neither good quality mana nor a large quantity. Ars observes that it might be a good idea to ask Beto to add mana training to the menu. Suddenly, something catches Ars' attention. He wonders who she is. She doesn't seem like she has ever been in a battle, but the quality of her mana is the highest he has ever encountered. The mana of most knights covers their entire bodies, but hers. Ars speaks to her, asking if he can have a moment. The girl turns around, questioning what she can do for him. The girl's mana is all concentrated in her head, and Ars doesn't know if she is doing that on purpose or unconsciously. The boy becomes very agitated and starts asking her name and where she lives. He says he wants to know everything about her, and the girl asks for a little space. Ars tries to explain that he doesn't want to do anything bad. He is just very interested in her. Someone approaches. Carlos Fontana tells Ars that it must be very nice for him to feel free to flirt with women right on New Year's. The man jokes that Ars is meeting women before meeting him. As the saying goes, great men have great desires. Ars explains that he didn't call her because she is a woman, but because he found something interesting about her. Carlos Fontana observes that the boy is thinking about Lilina. He tells the girl to show Ars a room and keep him company. She tries to argue, but he says that the girl does nothing but read books every day. It's a good opportunity to entertain one of his guests. Ars is very interested in talking to her, but apparently he ended up putting her in a very difficult position. When they gather, Ars asks how Lilina knows Carlos Fontana. The boy says he is asking because he noticed that the guy seems worried about her. The girl says they are related by blood, and Ars is shocked that they are siblings. He says that the two acted like strangers at the party. Then Lilina explains that Carlos Fontana was born of the Lord's wife. Meanwhile, she was born of one of the maids. This means they are half-siblings. Ars reflects that they have the same hair, but she doesn't have Carlos's ambitions. In fact, she seems very quiet and reserved. He also finds Carlos Fontana very impressive to look at. But Lilina's beauty is out of this world. Ars thinks for a moment and asks why the girl was walking with trays if she is the Lord's sister, and she replies that it is the duty of noble women to entertain guests. Normally you carry trays from childhood to learn good manners, but she ended up spending her whole life cooped up reading books. Carlos Fontana could no longer deal with this and told her to entertain the guests this New Year's, but it was inappropriate. She couldn't do anything even at 16 years old. Lilina looks down and asks what Ars wants to know. The boy explains that he was looking at the mana of the people at the party and noticed that the girl's mana is all concentrated in her head. She looks confused. Ars wants to know who taught her to do that, but the girl says no one. She actually has never heard of mana being different in parts of the body. Ars reflects that by concentrating mana in one part of the body, you can enhance it. Beto makes his whole body stronger when he covers it with mana, and Vargas focuses on the surface of his body to increase his defense. Accumulating mana in the head should improve memory, judgment, and processing. Memory preservation works similarly. So apparently Lilina is doing that unconsciously. The MC notices that even the quality of her mana is better than that of the other guests. Maybe this is an innate talent, or because she reads a lot, so he questions what kind of books she reads. She explains that the books are large and complex, much more difficult than common stories. That's why it takes a certain amount of time to read and understand just one book. If scrolls are already expansive, books must be much worse. Although when he thinks about it, the letters that Tryon writes to the nobility are full of fluff and long sentences. Ours can read to some extent, but if he were asked to read a classic without a dictionary, none of it would make sense. The boy asks if Lilina can explain what that book is about using simple words. She said that there are history books, and he doesn't even know the history of that world. He wants to know, for example, why the royal family that gathered all the nobility declined so much.